Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are live. Spencer, Molly, Emma, and Chessa. Hey, Chessa.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Can you hear us really good? I wanted to make sure you can hear us. So, I was supposed to actually open with a video, so why don't we actually play that now?
So if you're not satisfied that this person will not offend again, then you won't reprove. You'll disfellowship.
Yes.
And when the person's disfellowshipped, they then can still attend meetings and so on, but under some restriction, is that right?
Under a lot of restrictions.
Yes. And members of the congregation cannot associate with them socially.
Socially or spiritually.
Yes. But the person is still otherwise in the world and can associate with people outside of the church.
Yes.
And you don't take into consideration, do you, how people outside of the church might be kept safe from such a person who you're not satisfied will not reoffend?
If they were outside the church and they were a close friend, I would tell them.
Well, and how would you know if they're a close friend and they're outside of the church?
Now, if they were a close friend of mine.
A close friend of yours?
If I was.
Yes.
If I associated with them.
Well, what about people who are not close friends of yours, others than outside of the church? You don't take any steps, do you, to protect them from this potential reoffending? You don't, do you? You're concerned with the congregation principally,
Yeah,
aren't you?
we're concerned with the congregations. We are shepherds of the congregation.
Yes, and you're not a shepherd to those who are not in the congregation.
No.
And as an organisation, in your experience, you don't seek to protect or take care of children who are outside of the congregation.
That's a broad statement.
Well, I can limit it.
Yeah, limit it,
In
please.
your decision on whether or not to disfellowship someone, you don't take consideration of children outside of the congregation.
Do take consideration of them, but what ability have we got to protect every child in Australia?
Well, what you can do is you can report to the child protection authorities.
And that is done in some cases.
But generally it's not done, is it?
No.
It's not done unless there's a legal requirement for it to be done, is there?
That is true.
Wow. I saw Shelly is in the comments, so you guys, if you have questions, you can address it to her now. She is coming up on our stream later for an interview, and I just noticed that she said it brings back memories. Probably more so for her than us, but watching that clip, it is shocking, right?
I never noticed before watching it. He said he would tell his friends. So one, isn't that breaking the elders' rules? And he would only tell his friends. Wow.
And
so only his friends matter.
And I don't know if he meant to be flippant, but the whole, well, how can we protect every child in Australia?
By reporting them to the police, that's how.
Yeah. So as you guys know, that we are live today is going to be about the ARC.
Easy.
We are going to be. This is the 5th year or 5th anniversary of it.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we will
Yeah.
encourage everybody to share the stream. Share the stream in groups. Share your stream on the page on your pages. And I guess we could actually get started. Emma actually got us started with a fabulous breakdown of the ARC, and I want to pull it up real quick. Do you guys see that? Now, I'm looking at the comments, and I'm kind of concerned. Some people say that we're echoing.
Okay. Is it just one particular person
don't-
or the whole?
Actually, let me actually look in the comments, guys. If you are in the comments and you can't hear, Nigel says our sound is good.
Okay.
Okay, then there is someone else that says that it is echoing.
Is it just one person that's echoing, or us as a whole?
I will. When I get a chance to check, I'm gonna actually check. So, but if you can't hear us, let us know in the comments. So I guess we'll begin with.
I can check Spence if you want to.
Sure. So we can
Do
begin
you want
with
me
our.
to? Okay.
Yep. To see if we're echoing. Sorry, we had a sound check before we came on, people.
Sometimes it
it-
works great in sound check, and then it doesn't when we go live.
Right. As the joys of live streaming, we don't have the ability to cut and chop our videos. Everything is live. Everything you see is live. So, Emma, why don't you tell us a little bit about this screenshot that we're seeing here? Because people think, number one, on that clip, that was a Jehovah's Witness on the stand. If you are just joining us, that's the Jehovah's Witness, and there is their typical reaction. If you thought his reaction was apathetic, it ranges from apathy to outright anger over talking about the child abuse and sex abuse that exists in their organization. And Emma and I are usually in the groups with Jehovah's Witnesses and talking to Jehovah's Witnesses directly. And you actually have done a couple reaction videos with Jehovah's Witnesses, and you usually post this on Twitter too, to let people know how outrageous they have responded to the Royal Commission. And this is a good one of the many examples that we have, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoke to many Jehovah's Witnesses in the group about the 2-witness rule and the Australian Royal Commission, and the policies and the sex abuse issues. And like in this screenshot, obviously I'm answering somebody that was saying that Jehovah's Witnesses are good-hearted people. So I says to them now, do you think good-hearted people would stand by organisations that protect paedophiles? And part of their reply was, so I don't bother about it. I don't judge other people. And then somebody else said about that she's tired of hearing about it. And so I was like, well, don't you think they are tired of being molested?
Right.
Like they're just saying it doesn't really bother me, so it doesn't affect their lives.
And I think the next slide we have here is another example. And what we're going to do is actually make this slideshow available so that you can look at the comments and the slideshow a lot closer. But here's another one here.
This
right?
person, like with what they said, totally contradicted themselves, because they were saying that if a person goes back to his or her bad way of life, the elders will look at the case and decide what to do scripturally. And if they repent, he'll be allowed to come back to the organisation. Then in the next breath, he's saying Jehovah's organisation is clean, maintained to the highest cleanliness more than other organisations in the world.
Sure.
How can they be? When you've just said that paedophiles are allowed to come back into your congregation, then how can it be the cleanest organisation in the world?
And that actually goes back to our clip. I mean, he seemed very surprised. Like, we protect the Jehovah's Witness children. And he's like, well, what about the children on the outside?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's not even a thought to them that they need to protect so-called worldly every child. So the next slide we have here. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
There was, if you can skip back, there was
Go
one
back? Okay.
I didn't
sorry.
read one on that one. That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm going too quick. There we go.
Oh yeah, that person said no one committed such child sex abuse or raping that child. It's a fallacy and a conspiracy to criticise the JWs. So even though their own leaders were there admitting it, and then someone said it's a crime to have sex with someone who is not your husband or wife. So again, they're just belittling the whole fact that it's having sex with children that's the issue, not, they try and put it on the same level as immorality, as cheating on your wife. It's not. Having sex with the children is on a completely different scale.
Yeah.
But they can't accept that.
I love, Emma, in the groups you always say sex abuse is a crime, not a sin. They equate, like you said, sins. Go ahead, Molly.
Like depending on what you believe, like let's put it, okay, say you're a Christian or whatever. Okay, say that you believe it's a sin, but honey boo boo, it's a crime too. That needs to be reported to the police. And I went to an elder last year asking him about these exact questions, and he was kind of like that guy in the video. He was like, and I'm just like, well, exactly, that's your problem. You don't know how to answer this question. It's a fucking crime. And okay, believe it's a sin too, whatever. I don't care what your Sky Daddy teaches you, as long as you report child abuse.
So I just want to give people a little background of what we're doing in case you're just joining us. We're showing you Jehovah's Witness reactions to the child abuse. Well, not all of them were not accusations. They were established in court. Yeah. During this time, for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in groups, especially if you have groups, shout out to Thomas Miller and a few others who have groups set up just for Jehovah's Witnesses. So I have a group, and we're in these groups, and you're talking to Jehovah's Witnesses face to face, and a lot of times they're in from countries where the internet is, it's not as popping as it is over here, so they don't have a lot of internet access there. So when you try to present them with news articles, when you try to present them with other videos, they claim everything was fake news. And then the tone kind of shifted once the Watchtower came out. Just a little bit like, oh, okay, well, we have it, but it's not as bad. But for a year or even more, hold on, Molly. For a year or over more in these groups, you'll see even in this shot here, Emma, that they would get so combative and get upset that they would come out of their own Jehovah's Witness. They cuss you out, call you names. Go ahead, Emma, here.
I've seen, I've present them with the actual screenshots of their Watchtower for the CSA policies, and they still deny it. And this person here, it's quite shocking that Jehovah's Witness said to me, "Girl, you've been having too much anal sex. The shit went up to your brain. You need to clean up now, seriously." Because I showed her their own article on CSA. And then, on the other side, you can see, they're saying, well, if the rapist is repentant, we can let them stay in the congregation, for we are forgiven. And if we say repentant, meaning he will never do it again. It's easy just to say, oh, I'm sorry. That does not mean you're not going to do it again at all.
And anybody that knows or has been a victim of child sex abuse, you know that the offender almost always offends again. And a lot of people say that child molesters or they can't be rehabilitated, just simply can't. So it's almost like the Jehovah's Witnesses are in a bubble. I know these Jehovah's Witnesses, these reactions, and if some of the Jehovah's Witnesses are watching, these are your people saying these things, and Jehovah's Witnesses are totally different in the groups than they are at your door. That's for sure.
I posted on my page I started, where I publish victim stories, I started doing some photo albums with people that are on the sex offender registers and the details. And most of those, it shocked me, have 3 to 8 victims. Very few of them have 1 or 2 victims. They have a list of victims.
Yes.
Exactly. But what's crazy about this is that even now that they acknowledge that they have an issue, they will still say that they are handling it the best. that they rehabilitate these people, that they can fix these people, and that they consider the child first, but they don't, and it shows
Chessa,
by
you want
their
to say
attitude.
something about rehabilitation?
We can't hear you if you're speaking. We could hear you earlier.
Yeah, Chessa, we can't hear you, honey. Okay, Chessa will be back. Chessa, hold that thought. We'll come back to you about rehabilitation and child molestation. Go ahead with this particular screen, Emma.
So more comments. Child abuse, although ugly, is not an unforgivable sin, but what should be more concerned with is blasphemy. So they're more bothered about you blaspheming, as they say, against the Holy Spirit than raping children. And then somebody else was trying to tell me that the police can't solve matters. Only the governing body can solve child sex abuse that happens in the congregation.
And let's see here, the next screen here. Oh, one of the common objections, you probably know this, Emma, that we get in these groups is that we don't have jobs because we're talking about child abuse, child molestation and child abuses. As you can see here, I put a screenshot of how many victims. There were 1,800 plus victims, 1,006 child abusers in that Australian Royal Commission. He insisted that Jehovah's Witnesses didn't relocate the elders to other kingdom halls, although when they are reinstated, you don't know what congregation that they're going to. They're not tracking the child abusers as far as that we know. Especially even when they're announced from the platform as no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't tell you that they have been, that the reason why they're no longer Jehovah's Witnesses is because they may have raped a child in the congregation. So if you're a parent in the congregation, now you have to guess at what the person is being kicked out for, and you have no way of protecting your child. So, and that is how a lot of these abusers were able to repeat these offenses over and over, multiple children sometimes in the same congregation. The next screen, go ahead, Emma.
And not to mention
Pramala.
that what's crazy about this, if it's not reported to the police, say you kick them out of the kingdom hall, they will still get to find, children off the street. It's just gonna make it harder for them because they don't have pre-groomed children who believe that adults are always right because Jehovah said so. So you're gonna have a harder time finding a kid to abuse like that, but you're still gonna, if they want to, they will still find those children. You need to report to the police. That's just no way around it.
I get to think one of the other things that people don't realize is that even when they're disfellowshipped, they can still come into the kingdom hall. They have access to bathrooms. They have access to all the places that a child, like for me, I used to send my child to the bathroom. I didn't necessarily go with my child to the bathroom all the time.
Right.
So even when they're disfellowshipped, if you can see here, I have an image that I was posting repeatedly, like almost every day, of all of the pedophiles that were in the Jehovah's Witness order, pictures of them to try to shock them, to say, hey, look, we have what they would call demons in their midst. No one, what I found interesting is even with them being pedophiles, they would not, they felt sorry for them. Like, oh, well, you shouldn't be attacking them. Maybe that they are back in the organization, or they can be repent, or as you were showing in your other slide, Emma, that somehow you repent or say I'm sorry is enough, and it's not. And you can see from this screen here, or I think this is actually somebody is calling you're posting rubbish.
Yeah, they're saying to me, why are you posting rubbish? And I was posting like the Watch Time magazine. And then they're like, what are you saying? Child abuse is terrible things. We all know that. But everyone makes a mistake. What he did was a sin, and everybody do sin. Or are you not a sinner? It's like, yes, I'm a sinner, apparently, but I don't rape children because I'm a sinner.
Yeah, but your sin is consensual adult sex, not raping children, for example, or smoking a cigarette. Like, it's not the same level at all.
There is also a ex-Jehovah's Witness that actually has a map for abusers. I don't know if you've seen it, Emma, where you can actually put in your zip code to see whether or not there are Jehovah's Witness child molesters around you. So,
Well, I didn't include it in this, but when I started researching all the sex offenders, there is 4 registered in my area that would have been at my local assemblies.
Wow.
Now, nobody told us about those. And these are like big time children rapists, and they are on the register, and I wouldn't have known unless I'd have looked them up.
Wow.
a lot of times you get confronted with you're an apostate. You need to go back to the meetings.
I was asked when I went out last year, are you an apostate? Asking these questions.
And as you can see from a lot of these screens, they automatically assume, and it's kind of that when you bring an awareness to the child sex abuse in their organization, that you are an apostate, because they are told that they are apostate lies. I have a clip. We have a clip, but we're not going to play it. Of one of the leaders actually being confronted, asking by the Royal Commission as to whether or not they were saying that these were apostate lies as opposed to actual cases of child sex abuse. And here you go again in all caps: child abuse, sex abuse is not a crime. It's a crime, not a sin, rather.
The person above actually said to me, "What do you want for the congregation to do with the repentant sinners? Do you want them to punish like the government do?" Yes.
Exactly. Electric chair. Maybe,
And this is another one here where it looks like they're trying to.
Oh, if he's repentant, why can't he? If he's it says like if he's a child molester and touched children, it says, well, if he's repentant, why can't they be allowed to stay? He without sin cast the first stone.
And this is just me upset one day because this was right after the Watchtower hit of them trying to basically gloss over all of the child sex abuse accusations and try to almost say that, almost flat out say that the apostates were using this to try to take the organization down. So like a lot of us were in these groups for like over a year and a half for me. It may have been longer for other people, but when that Watchtower hit, I literally did go through the group to find out everybody, as many people as I can. Everybody that was saying it was fake news, I made return visits on them.
Same.
And I started retagging them in the. Did you see the Watchtower? Did you see the Watchtower? Did you see the Watchtower? Because they wouldn't even acknowledge it.
And that's why I still love to this day that I made the choice, as hard as it was, to go to that Watchtower study, like to go to a Kingdom Hall for the first time, to a meeting in 23 years. But I was able to say to them in the JW groups, I was there. I heard them read this out word for word. That was definitely
right. And you can see their reaction still. This is what you call fake news. This is another person made Jehovah deal with you. Another one told me, get your facts right, girl. Another one said, how much are they paying you? As if there's a apostate headquarters paying us.
Yes.
I would be rich.
Yeah.
And then one of the comments was, so I'm guessing you were abused as a child with all the obsession on this subject. I thought that was the most disgusting type of comment, because even if I was, I could be very well a Jehovah's Witness in the congregation hurt, and they just don't care. They only care about what the organization looks like and upholding whatever reputation they think that they have. You would be surprised that even in my group, there are a lot of non-Jehovah's Witnesses who join that group to just learn more about Jehovah's Witnesses. And Jehovah's Witnesses attack them because they automatically assume that because they bring up child abuse, because they've seen it in the group by other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who bring awareness, they automatically assume that they were Jehovah's Witnesses before. So it is through the activism of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that, and spreading the word, that we believe that that we brought awareness to this issue to push the Watchtower enough to even acknowledge it at some point.
Right.
So it's not the Jehovah's Witnesses, and a lot of the Jehovah's Witnesses who are in these groups, they frequent these groups, they know this. And so my second question to them was always, so you've been in this group for a year. You say you see me post this for a year. How many people in your congregation have you warned about the things that you've seen in these groups? It's always
Yeah.
a reply that is off the chain. But anyway, we have Chessa back. Chessa, let's see if we can hear you now, honey.
Hey, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Awesome. So sorry about that, guys. So yeah, I was just going to talk a little bit about this. I'm sorry I had to jump off, but just basically a general idea. The first clip that we watched when we started this, they say silence is golden. But on the last question he was asked about, whether or not they really care about other people and other communities outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, the silence there must have cost Watchtower millions of dollars, or it's going to, because it's just appalling that Emma, when you're talking to people about child sexual abuse, they bring up anal sex and try to shame you, like you're filthy for even talking about it, when they won't inside of their own community. And so constantly trying to combat people and this narrative and trying to bring awareness is exhausting. And I really appreciate you guys, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of this broadcast. But on rehabilitation, recidivism rate for child sexual abuse, if someone commits abuse, is something ridiculous, like 70 to 80%. So once someone has acted on that inclination, there's literally no possible way that they won't again, or that they at least won't fantasize about it and have extreme impulses to do it. So thinking that you can just take someone's microphone duties away and expect them not to abuse another kid is appalling. And we're seeing with this Australian Royal Commission right now and the Regis scheme and everything that's happening, it's really opening the door for this and really giving us all a chance to finally get some things done with this.
Yeah.
Right, and can I just add to that they can still, like Emma mentioned before, that they can still go to the hall. And let me tell you, I was a kid in the hall, and I went alone to the bathroom. Now, if some big man, I'm still like 40 kilograms. Do you know how easy that is for an adult grown man to just drag and do whatever the fuck he wanted with me? That's why I avoid crowds still to this day as an adult woman, because I'm very tiny. So imagine it's a kid, like a 5-year-old kid who's even weighs less than 40 kgs, which is like a lightweight for an adult man to grab and manhandle even, or whatever. So, the hole is small. You don't expect shit to happen to your kid 2 meters away from you, because the holes are small. They are tiny. They don't have big areas where your child could get lost. So the worst you assume is they might sneak off and stay in the bathroom longer than they need to.
I know that we had we have somebody in here, Todd, who's mentioning some of victims at his hall. I know we had a abuser in my hall, and this was way after I had left, but we knew him intimately, and I just think about the times that we used to go out in service with this dude.
Wow.
And obviously he had inclinations toward child sex abuse because of the gravity of why he's in jail now. He's one of the few who's probably prosecuted. Todd Faber is saying that they moved the victims out of his hall in East Dearborn, Michigan. I know where that is, in 1985, and kept the elder perpetuating the molestation. He was one of those kids. I'm sorry about that, Todd.
Wow.
2 suicides from that hall alone. I was nearly 3.
Wow.
We are going to go ahead and go into case study 29 and talk about the Royal Commission. You want to lead us off, Emma?
Okay, so those that aren't aware, I've put some slides so we can do just a rundown of what the Royal Commission was. The Royal Commission held a public hearing in Sydney from Monday the 27th of July to Wednesday the 5th of August. And it was a public hearing that inquired into the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in Australia.
Okay, and the next slide.
And this is, I remember this morning, this is when it hit the headlines. Like this was like the BBC and the Guardian in the UK, and it massively like hit all the newspaper headlines. So the purpose of the commission was to inquire into the experience of survivors of child sex abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses, the response of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the systems, policies and procedures that they had in place for raising and responding to allegations or concerns, and also the systems, policies and procedures they had in place to prevent child sex abuse happening within Jehovah's Witnesses. So then I wanted to make this point that in Australia at the time there was currently 182 congregations, 68,000 members. Now, if you compare that to the fact that they had 1,006 abusers in 821 congregations, that's more than one per congregation.
Which will let you know that because of the gravity or the amount of abusers that they have, there is no way that there are Jehovah's Witnesses who get upset with us have not either heard about child sex abuse or have encountered it themselves.
Right. And
I need to
we
say,
also,
sorry as well, alleged abusers.
Alleged, right.
They wasn't all reported to the police, so they haven't all been proven, so they are alleged abusers.
right, and then add in the number that many abuse victims will not speak about their situation. So, like, imagine the fact that these were about 2,000 victims who spoke, even if not to the police, at least to the ARC, and then imagine all those who did not speak to anyone about it.
Yep, exactly.
So that will be at least like 3,000 to 4,000, I would suppose.
Easy. And Mr. Jackson and Mr. Spinks said that there was going to be no scope for flexibility on the change in reinstating disfellowshipped of individuals if they demonstrate repentance. And obviously that May Watchtower there, they admitted that true Christians have been affected by the plague of child sex abuse, and this is why. Because if they're not going to change the fact that they reinstate people for saying sorry, then they're just going to keep being full of paedophiles.
And right, that goes back to what Chessa was saying earlier. Taking a microphone away, sitting a person down for a year, and then allowing them back into the Kingdom Hall is not rehabilitating. You're not requiring that the person get any type of help. You're not reporting them to the police. There are some Jehovah's Witnesses who are adamant that they report child sex abuse, and that's not. It's kind of, if you are an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you kind of know what they're kind of hinting at is the mandatory reporting laws. What Jehovah's Witnesses do is that elders, they have to report to the headquarters, who then decide whether or not they have a sex reporting laws in their state, and then they will report it because they are mandated to do it. And sometimes we found in the Australia Royal Commission that there were sometimes that they were, even in mandatory reporting states, they were not doing it.
Yep.
Chessa, did you have something?
Montana as well, I think, was mandatory, but they didn't.
I was just going to say, I can't remember if it was this report or another report where it was said that over 90% of cases are also incestual or incest related. So, it breeds in the family, and that's not something just related to Jehovah's Witnesses. That's something that stems outside of Jehovah's Witnesses. Obviously, child sexual abuse is a plague around the world, but it's how these organizations handle this abuse. And, it may start out incestually, and because there's not two witnesses, nothing happens. And then it can branch outside of that to other children outside of the congregation, outside of that area. And if someone has a violent proclivity for that, which is what rape is violence, whether people agree on that or not, or think it's just adultery or a sin, that's not true. It's an act of violence. So if people are carrying out acts of violence against children, and cannot be rehabilitated, and often it occurs in the family first before it branches outside of that. If the elders and the organization know, and they keep such deep records on individuals, I think Trey Bundy and the witnesses, he showed like an actual form that is similar to the forms that elders fill out and send into Bethel in those blue envelopes. Those forms are extensive. It's not like they don't understand the violence that is occurring. So for them to keep this quiet and only report to the legal department, there's no child safety bureau in the witnesses. There's no actual situation set up for this is outside of legal. They are more concerned about legalities and protecting their own asses than protecting children. So, as we go on to see in this broadcast and future broadcasts, finally the world is looking at ways that they can implement changes to protect children in all different sorts of situations, including if they're Jehovah's Witnesses. But changing legislation is really going to be the only way to force Watchtower to address this at all, because until we change legislation to the point of where they can't call legal, they have to call police first. They have to call some sort of authority to let them know what's happened in the congregation. They're going to continue to cover this up, but they're going to keep extensive notes while they do it. So awful situation,
And on top of that, there was a newspaper article. We didn't get it, but it's out there that says that they have a secret secret database.
Right.
So they keep these files of these pedophiles, but they don't let the congregation, they don't let the parents know that there's pedophiles in the congregation so they can protect their children.
And
They
that's
even
true.
have blue envelopes, especially for child sex abuse. Notes.
And that's that's true that they don't let the parents know, because I asked an elder this exact question: do you let parents of children know if there is child abuse taking place in the congregation by anyone? And he said, well, no, because we don't want to ostracize them. And I'm like,
Wow.
excuse me. And I see a comment that I think it should be addressed. Is that
Okay, well,
Karen
Molly,
Payne?
let's go through the presentation, then we'll go ahead and hit the comments. Go ahead, Emma.
Okay, so I'll explain at this point. What I've done with the slides is the main part is actually in copy and paste direct from the case study PDF. And then what I've done in the black boxes is sections of the Watchtower article that all the Jehovah's Witnesses studied that correlates with what was told to the Australian Royal Commission. So it shows that Jehovah's Witnesses do know all this information as well. So the process of responding to allegations of child sex abuse, when an allegation of child abuse is made within the congregation, the Jehovah's Witness organisation conducts a spiritual investigation to establish the truth of the allegation and to determine the degree of repentance of and appropriate sanction for the accused. So it's all scriptural, spiritual based, not police investigation.
And we haven't even mentioned the lawsuits. They fight these lawsuits tooth and nail. A lot of these, I had a Jehovah's Witness tell me the other day, well, they're paying the victims. No, they are reluctantly paying the victims, if at all, or they going back to have the judgments reduced. If they don't have to pay the victims, they won't. So that lie that, okay, well, now, where they're paying the victims is begrudgingly.
And if you know, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and a lot of times they settle too. Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, and if you notice in that box in the Watchtower, they said elders will endeavour to comply with secular laws about reporting a matter. Endeavour.
Try. Well, as Yoda says, no try is only do, right? Here we go.
So yeah, this was how they advised to report to the elders, and then just to trust in Jehovah, basically, that it will be resolved. And this is where the elders are instructed to contact the branch office, as we said. No mention of them conducting the police. And going back to that point where it said Australia considers itself bound by mandatory reporting legislation in Victoria, South Australia and Northern Territory. So some of those places they obviously didn't report. And in the box is proof of elders' letters where they're sent out to tell them to report to the branch. Elder Spinks, he said it's not a practice of the JWs to report child sex abuse to the police. So he admitted it.
Which is a chilling omission. You know, it's not your practice to report child sex abuse. You want to, ask the Jehovah's Witness organization, what do you gain by not doing it? You're getting sued. You're in the courts. Why not just report it to the police? Because
They
it's
lose members, but why is
Yeah.
that so important to them?
Right.
Numbers,
They lose
donations. Why is it important? The amount of numbers.
Well, they losing members anyway because a lot of people have walked away. I know the ARC and child sex abuse cases woke me up. Was one of the instrumental things that woke me up, and a lot of people.
The victim. I believe that in the last two elders' books they've changed this now, but the victim was required to make allegations in front of their abuser. So they were required to sit with 3, sometimes 5 male elders, talk about their abuse in front of their abuser. I think they've changed it to now that doesn't have to happen. The victim can submit a letter. But I've spoke to many victims where they were made to sit in front of their abuser and give details, which is obviously horrific for the victims.
And for anybody thinking about reporting, if you get wind of,
Yeah.
say, for instance, you're a victim and you know that you may have to face your abuser, why would you go? Why would you go through the judicial? And I think this is unique because judicial committees usually when they're formed because somebody has heard of a matter or maybe you told on yourself, they don't require you to face your accuser or people accusing you of smoking or adultery or anything like that.
Yeah.
This was a unique situation in which you would have to. And what if, as Chessa was saying earlier, what if your abuser was someone in your family? You have to face your father or face your brother, uncle, whoever, in a judicial setting with 3 men, and don't let the person that you're accusing have a position. Because, we are very familiar with the cronyism that goes on among elders within the organization, and make it very taxing on a abuser or a victim wanting to report abuse. Chessa, did you have something to say on that? If you're talking, Chessa, we can't hear you.
Can I just say about this? What's crazy is that they are so worried about the numbers. Yes, but this will cost them numbers. Like, look at the Catholic Church. At least they owned up to it, even if reluctantly. They said, "Okay, well, fuck it, we have to do this now, I guess," and they did it, And I'm not saying they are better because Lord knows they are not, but at least in this regard, they were better because now they have these systems in place that you can see in the news every other day. Some other priests get bust for kiddie porn or some stuff like that because they put these systems in place. And you see, as much as they try to guard their numbers, it will not do them any good because these children will eventually speak out. We will not be silent about it either as victims and survivors of domestic and childhood sex abuse and inappropriate conduct of adults around us all the fucking time. We will not stay silent, and those with common sense will listen, because if the organization was so pure, you would not see activism against it. You would see haters, meaningless bashing, meaningless rubbish talking and gossiping about so-and-so wore a skirt too short. But this is not gossip as so-and-so wore a skirt too short. This is about us sharing our stories of all sorts of abuse, mental, physical, sexual, spiritual, all kinds. And they want to call it fake or discredit it. If the organization was clean, there would not be such a scope of activism.
Yeah.
So, Emma, did you want to tell us about the 2 or 3 rule?
Yeah. So, elders, they can't take action unless there's 1, a confession, 2 or 3 credible witnesses. They said that can be 2 separate incidences. but prefer to be to the same incident. So if it's happened to 2 or 3 different people, but they prefer 2 or 3 witnesses to the same incident, or strong circumstantial evidence from at least 2 witnesses. Now, we keep calling it the 2 witness rule, but if you notice, it keeps saying 2 or 3, at least 2 witnesses.
I think, and Shelly's going to come on later, but she made a really good point about this particular rule here, and that it is eyewitnesses that they're asking for, as opposed to other types of witness testimony that is usually admissible in court. We'll circle back, and when she comes on there, maybe she can go into that a little bit in depth, because that makes a difference.
Yeah.
There are not going to be an eyewitness. An abuser, a raper is not going to rape somebody in front of somebody that can actually see them rape somebody. That's just not going to happen.
Any sort of abuse and criminal activity will not happen in front of 2 or 3 people. I can tell you that as someone who was abused all her childhood, it never happened when people could fucking see it. Or if someone saw it, it was my sister, who was not afraid to report. So obviously, if she called the police, what would happen? Nothing. It's a child. She would not have been taken seriously. I would not have been taken seriously. And they are asking for more evidence than the motherfucking police at this point.
Speaking of
and
evidence, go ahead.
Yeah, if there's not enough evidence from their scriptural or spiritual investigation, then it's left basically in Jehovah's hands. No mention of being left in the police hands, and in Jehovah's hands, and that means basically they ain't going to do fuck all. So it doesn't even get to a point where that person may be disciplined in the religion. Nothing happens.
Because Jehovah saved so many children. Huh. I want to see some proof on that, Jehovah's Witnesses. Bring it on, mate.
So if they don't have that, then they don't go to a judicial committee. And the judicial committee is where the elders will assess the degree of repentance. And this bit got me. Provide assistance to the perpetrator.
Wow.
And to determine an appropriate scriptural sanction. And they basically said in that watchtower that the primary task of the elders is to rehabilitate and restore the wrongdoer, regardless of the gravity of the wrongdoing.
Why do they want to recover child rapists so bad? Is this the soul that your clean, Puritan, perfect God, man, whatever Jehovah wants? Child molesters?
That Watchtower article blatantly states the elders primarily concerned with maintaining the sanctity of God's name. Not concerned with the child abuse victim, concerned with God's name.
That's the key right there, because you would think that the providing assistance would be
for the victim.
Well, be for the victim and not for the perpetrator. That's probably why they're having issues with the redress scheme. But we'll get to that at some point.
They would probably make up one to help the perpetrators get all their life and everything back together, but not the victims.
Pretty much.
So, onto your punishment. Sanctions. So, basically, I'm going to put it blunt here. If you're a JW who rapes a child, here's your punishment. Deletion if you're an elder or a ministerial servant. But if you go into the Australian Royal Commission's findings where they list all the victims and who the abuser was, you'll know that's not true. Because lots of those were elders and ministerial servants, and they are still in that position. So then you can also get reproved. So basically, if you say you're sorry, you can get to remain in the congregation. The members may or may not be told you are reproved, because they do something called private reproval, where they don't inform the congregation, but they never tell the congregation either way why you've been reproved.
And that is very true as of 2019, because I asked this exact question to the elder as well, and he said yes, and especially about this kind of offense, we won't tell publicly because we don't want to, again, ostracize the perpetrator, because we want to rehabilitate them, and we want to make sure that they can better themselves in the eyes of Jehovah. And I said, but we are talking about people who raped children.
Mm.
Like, why do you want to recover child rapists so
Yeah.
bad? And I'm sorry, but reproof is like, you cannot take the microphone. Is there a punishment enough for ruining and debilitating someone's entire life?
Yep.
Unrevocably, unfixably. No amount of therapy is gonna fully recover you from that kind of trauma. You know, you will get better eventually if you get proper therapy, if you take, you know, the proper action, and you can definitely be successful even as a survivor of all sorts of abuse.
Mhm.
But that's not gonna be compensation for wrecking your life in health.
Mm.
Not at
true.
all.
Very true.
If
What
you
about
just
the-
go
go ahead.
back one,
Yeah,
Spence,
sure.
Then, that's like about the disfellowshipping.
Oh, I'm just clicking, y'all. What was it, 25?
No, 25.
Oh, here we
yeah.
go.
So then the other punishment is when you're disfellowshipped and you're basically cast out from the organisation. But again, they will announce it that you're no longer a Jehovah's Witness, but they won't tell the congregation why. And then you can also be reinstated after an amount of time if you're thought to be repentant.
And
Chessa, I want to circle back to Chessa. I don't know what you were saying before. Do you remember what you were saying before? We couldn't hear you.
Vaguely, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
realized I was hitting my mute button here, and I didn't know.
Oh,
So that's why. Sorry. So yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I remember a situation in my congregation when I was a teenager, and there was this guy who had married a woman who had 3 teenage daughters, and then one of the three daughters came out and said that he was sexually abusing her, and so they went through the entire thing, and this one girl, she was like 16, ended up running away and going to a different congregation and like really messing up, getting disfellowshipped, and everybody thought she was just being uphill, because that's what you think when you're Jehovah's Witness, I guess. And then I guess like 10 years later, the other 2 daughters decided to come on and go to the elders and report him as well. Like he had been abusing all of them at the same time. But back then she was the only one who could speak up. And I just remember all she went through, having to run away from home, being shamed, being shunned, and, not being believed. And this guy stayed with that woman he was married to for another several years before he went out on her, and that's why they got divorced. But it had nothing to do with the fact that he was raping her daughters. It's just it's such a culturally insane situation, and by allowing people to repent and get a Monopoly you can pass go and collect $200 card. That's, there's no Monopoly jail card. You can't say, oh, you're jailed for 20 minutes. This is something that needs to be addressed responsibly. And they've just been so irresponsible. It's disgusting.
I just want to
Yes,
say to
they
everybody in the comments that we thank you for commenting. We're going to get to your comments on Facebook and YouTube, but I just want to bring up Nigel's right now only because it's going to cover you a little bit, Chessa. I hope you can read it. But he said, isn't there an emphasis on JW abuse victim to forgive his or her JW abuser?
There
Did you
is.
want to comment on that, Chessa?
So one of the parts of my story that people paid attention to in the article that was published in the Philadelphia Inquirer, I was raped when I was 5 years old by an elder son. And so it went all the way up to the DA's office, as far as I know, or something to that effect. I'm still learning more about it. As far as how was it handled, I was 5, so I didn't really understand at the time. But I remember a couple weeks went by, I think, and we went over to their family's house, and maid suggested to hug him at 5 years old. So I hugged the person who raped me, and
Wow.
my parents felt like they had to, as well, forgive this person. And it became such a toxic environment for our family because from then on, that poison stuck with us. What that young man did to me as a 5-year-old stuck with our family up until today. But we were made to kind of, smooth things over. This is Jehovah's organization. I'm sure he's sorry. It won't happen again. And the families in that congregation weren't even notified. So, it is a problem. It's definitely a problem. And you are encouraged to forgive your abuser, or at least find the humanity in them. when they've hurt you so badly. So especially for people who are hurting kids, that's just, it's insulting to say the least.
That's a good point, because not only, I think we were talking up to this point that the congregation collectively is expected to forgive the abuser. So not only are they asking for collective forgiveness, they're asking you to personally forgive your abuser. It is
Not to
disgusting.
mention, sorry, just to add one more thing on top of this, I know, and I think, you know, all of us in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community know of several people who the offender raped a child in the home, and then when the wife or the mother was talking to the judicial committee and wanting to divorce her husband or spouse who had raped their children or her children, she couldn't, because it wasn't even considered adultery. You know, how many cases have we seen where, you know, women are wanting to leave the person that's abusing their children actively, and they're being told that it's not adultery, that it was just a mishap, that they were confused, they were repressed, you weren't being submissive enough. Can you imagine the advice that mothers are given in these situations? It's absurd.
Emma,
Sorry.
you're fine. Emma, did you want to go into the ARC findings?
So bear in mind this is just Australia that was looked into, and there was 5,000 documents, case files dating back to 1950. There was 1,006 alleged perpetrators of child sex abuse, at least 1,800 victims. 579 of those members confessed to being an abuser. 108 were elders or ministerial servants. 28 alleged perpetrators were appointed as elders or ministerial servants after an allegation of child sex abuse. 401 alleged perpetrators were disfellowshipped as a result of the allegation. 230 of those were reinstated. 78 of those were disfellowshipped on more than one occasion because of the allegations of child sex abuse. And none of those were reported to the police. And Mr. Tull, who works for the Service Department, told the Royal Commission that for approximately the last 2 years, on behalf of the Legal Department, he's been responsible for receiving telephone calls from the congregational elders about allegations of child sex abuse. He estimated that over that period, he had received and continues to receive 3, sometimes 4 calls each month.
Molly, you said something. You had something you want to say?
Yeah, but what Chessa was saying, imagine the advice. Well, I can tell you what advice they give when a wife is being beaten to a point of actually miscarrying, because my JW mother experienced that. She was beaten and raped to the point of miscarrying, so she reported to the elders. The elders told her, well, sister, you have to be more submissive. You have to render him his due. That's what they told her, and they reproved him privately and moved him into another congregation when my JW mother managed to gather evidence of him having sex with hookers. That was the only thing that got them worried enough to graciously allow my family to move to another congregation. What kind of fuckery is that? I'm sorry, but that's just bullshit. And I remember that this attitude stuck with me. And this is how I got into an abusive relationship, because this JW mentality of just be your yes man, just don't question it, just go with it. And
speaking of that, let's go around the glass table to actually talk about some of the stories that we have that are connected to the ARC, as well as CSA, because we do have child sex abuse survivors on the panel as well. And we have Jennifer, who's going to join us. Jennifer, I'm going to join, put you in now, honey. Hi, Jennifer.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead. We want to start with you.
Oh boy. Well, I got like a long story. I mean, yeah, I was sexually abused. Oh god. I started when I was 4 years old. It was a friend of the my mom's friend from the congregation, and like my mom's friend, the wife, she was baptized, and then she had 3 children. Her husband wasn't. He was an alcoholic. And then she had 2 sons and a daughter. The daughter eventually got baptized, but the 2 sons didn't. But it was her oldest son who, this is back in the 70s, like, oh God, yeah, probably like 75, around that, because I was about 4. And we spent a lot of time with them, went on vacations and stuff like that with them. I mean, skiing vacation. And the man who molested me actually was, he taught me how to ski, which is, goes back. But I never said anything about it. It was, I didn't realize it happened. I mean, you guys might think this is nuts, and I thought it was nuts. But my memories came back to me in recurring dreams when I was a child. The same thing over and over and over again. And when he moved away, got married, those dreams stopped. And there's a lot of different things. Like when we were considered part of their family. And so there were things like that he would say to me. You know, he never became a Jehovah's Witness. He went into the army and stuff like that. But there were things that he would say to me, like when he saw me as I was getting older and growing up, that you could just like, yeah, it was the puzzle, like, huh, that was weird. You don't say those things to a kid. Like, for instance, like when he got married, my parents went to the wedding and no kids were allowed to go, right? Because it was catered and all this ordeal, whatever. And he called me up from the reception. I guess at this time, I'm thinking I was probably about 8, not 9, maybe 9 years old, maybe 10, somewhere's around there. And he says to me on the phone, I mean, like, first of all, it's just odd, right, for a guy who's now like in his 20s, whatever, at his wedding reception to call up a little girl, you know, from his wedding reception. I mean, it's just weird, right? But it doesn't really make any sense, you know, in that respect. But he asked me if I'd gotten a job yet. I wanted to know if I was working at a topless waitress bar. How inappropriate is that to say that to a child? And it's like, I kept in contact with him because, like, a lot of times, like with your abusers, they groom you. I mean, and we were family, sort of. We weren't blood related, but we spent every time that they had family gatherings, and it would be their non-Jehovah's Witness relatives and stuff, and we were always invited. We were considered to be part of it. And so I admired him. I wanted his approval. I wanted him to like me. I liked him, but I was also scared to death of him at the same time. And when he was in the army and married, and I think remember him being in Vietnam, I'd write him like we were like pen pals or whatever. And he sent me a birth announcement for his first child. And I wish I still have it. I wish I kept it, because I would have proof of what he said to me. And I will never forget. And I never told my mom, because it was like something, like those dreams, like I just dismissed it. It's a dream, and they stopped. But then these different things that he would say, and I'm like kind of taken back, like why would he say that to me? But anyway, he said that in this letter with his birth announcement of his daughter, that when his wife got old and wrinkly, at that time I'll be 18 years old, and that he'll marry me. Why would you say that to look? You know, it's like old until when I look back on all these things, it was like, oh my God, you know, all these puzzles fit. And then like I always dismissed those dreams. And when I was in my early, I'm thinking maybe 2021, I started going to a support group for child sexual abuse survivors, and it was like a 12-step meeting. And this girl, and it's funny because it was in a church too. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses don't have any kind of those 12-step group meetings to support groups to help people. Now, just go out and preach door to door, and that'll make everything better, you know. But So I go to, not to say that churches are any better, but it's just that they had, at least they had that program. And I went, and I'd gone for a while, and this girl stood up and she said that, was talking about dreams and how her abuse would, even to that day. I mean, this is many years. I mean, so 20 years ago that I was going to these things, the group, and she stood up and she said that her memories were coming back to her in dreams. Like you repress it and it comes back to you, and it's like. And I remember getting in the car because I didn't have my driver's license. I had to drive myself there. My mom would drive me, and then she would sit outside and wait for me, for the hour, and then I'd come out. And she said, and I told her, I said, I know what happened to me. But it goes. There's another story. I mean, for all my life since I can remember, I had this. They called it a phobia. Now I know better that it was complex post-traumatic stress is what was being triggered. When it comes to medical stuff, when it comes to going to the doctor, any kind of medical procedure, I get this intense rage inside of me. I could not go through it. I couldn't do it. I hated anyone in the medical field, like so much so. And it sounds nuts, and but I would get so angry that I really wish these people harm, And I didn't even know them, and it really affected my life big time.
Jennifer, how have you been able to move through it now? I mean,
this is going back. I mean, it took me many, many years, lots of therapy and
therapy. That's a good one.
But you know what it is? It's the realization. See, this is the thing. You can't fix what's wrong until you go back to where you were harmed. Right. And you got to fix that and heal that first. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know all my life. I mean, 20 something years of my life, I had no idea where this was coming from. I thought I was broken. There was something wrong with me. What's wrong with me to have this fear? It's not right. And it's just like a huge long thing, because now I get, oh God, now it affected me with my child, my firstborn, giving birth to her and stuff like that. And that's a whole nother story with the Jehovah's Witnesses. That was a nightmare, but I had a really hard time with that though. But anyway, all this time I'm thinking I'm broken. I mean, I've attempted suicide a few times over it, because I was just like,
I'm so sorry.
I think when I think back, like I start getting choked up, because when I think back of how desperate I felt back then, it was horrible. Because I knew I was molested too. I had been molested again, by my sister's husband. She's 8 years older than me, and I was like, it started like when I was 11, when she met him, and he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. They wound up having a baby, and that baby my parents got custody of, but she was very ill when she was born, and my sister and her husband had to live with us. And so when she was born, I was 13, and when I was 13 is when he raped me. But the molestation started like little things back when I was like 11. And again, it's something that he had said to me one time, that when my niece when I got old enough, when I became 18, that I could be my niece's mother. He told me that he would marry me. And that, like, these pedophiles, what they do, it's like crazy. Come to find out, he molested his daughter.
Wow.
Too. And he has it from another marriage, and he started molesting her when she was like 4 years old or something like that. But I mean, there's more details to that stuff. But anyway, so when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was going for therapy, because this medical stuff was really affecting me. The checkups, like Spencer, I know you had children, and Chessa, you had children, our child. So it's like, the medical visits, the blood tests, and all that stuff. And then just childbirth alone. Oh my God. Like, how invasive is that to your body? Right.
Right.
And I had C-sections though, but still it was an ordeal. Just going into the hospital and stuff. I had to be put to sleep. I wasn't awake during the C-section. I put to sleep for it. I couldn't handle it. And that caused a whole nother trauma, just being in the hospital and dealing, because I was being triggered. And again, at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I'm thinking I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. And my husband and his mother and father were coming down on me. That's a whole nother issue. Like blaming me instead of trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Oh, she's crazy. She's nuts. She's incompetent. She shouldn't have a child. She doesn't deserve, And no, I mean, I could take care of my child just fine. It was that whole thing. I kept being triggered with the medical stuff. And then when she was born, it got trickled down onto her, because now I'm the mom and now I got to protect her. And my feelings were, every time I took her to the doctor for her checkups, it felt like she was being raped. I mean, that's how I can describe, that's how I felt inside. I knew in my mind it wasn't true,
Right.
but my feelings inside knew, no. So anyway, so going to this therapy with the dreams and stuff, and I get back into the group meeting. I get go in there with my mom, and I tell her, I said, I know what happened to me, and I told her, and it all made sense then, because when he was molesting me, he was playing doctor with me, and in the dreams, it was like something that clicked. Because in my dreams, I remember it was outside. It was in the backyard of their house, like just past the wood line, and it was like a shed. And I told my mom, I said, but they had no shed there. Their shed was by their carport on the side of the property outside. It wasn't in the woods. And my mom says, no, Jennifer, their sister, the daughter, she had a doll playhouse back there. And so my conscious mind, I don't remember that ever being a dollhouse there or whatever, or back in the woods. But in my dream, it was there. So that it just confirmed everything. Well, yeah, this dream was real. This wasn't something that a 5 or 6 year old is going to dream. Why would I, and that's something, like, why would a 5 or 6 year old dream about, a boy, or no, well, he wasn't, you say boy, he was in his late teens at the time when it happened, probably like 15, 16, 17-ish, around there. Why would a 5, 6 year old till 9-year-old kid have this recurring dream of this guy molesting her, putting his hands in her pants and touching her and playing doctor? Why would I have a dream like that? That makes it I would never even think of something like that. I mean, and I didn't even, at 4 years old, what do you know? You can't make sense of it to even put it into words to explain what's happening to you. And it's just that shame too, because I mean, the shame, the guilt, and also growing up Jehovah's Witness, there comes a time when you are a child, you realize what you can and can't say to your parents.
Right.
Going back, I remember at 8 years old, there was this boy in our neighborhood that my sister used to babysit, not Jehovah's Witness or anything. And he liked me. 8 years old, I'm in 3rd grade or something, right? And he's paid special attention to me. His name was John. And one day I went to school and he says something so mean to me. He says, well, I'm not your boyfriend anymore. I like Christy, this other girl, better. She's prettier than you. I was devastated. Absolutely devastated. And I came home to my mom that day, and she was in her bedroom and cleaning, dusting, whatever. And I sat down in the chair and I just bawling my eyes out, like crying so hard, I'm sobbing, like you can't catch your breath and stuff, that hyperventilating thing. And I told her what this boy said. And you'd expect your mom to come and hug you and tell you nice things and encourage you and say, well, he doesn't know what he's missing and you are pretty and whatever, and make you feel better. My mom, no. That's it. No more. He is not allowed to come here anymore. No more boys, no more contact with him. That's it. No more. And I felt like I was in trouble. the way she was yelling and carrying on. And I remember saying to myself, and I'm 8 years old, and I remember saying to myself, I can't talk to my mom about this stuff, So, I mean, whereas, there's walls that are put up, and you can never have that open relationship with your parents, because you learn at an early age that there's certain things you need to hide from them, and
they're there to protect you, and you kind of learn
right.
that from that dynamic that they won't protect you if something happens.
I was an 8-year-old kid. What do you think is going to happen? And so was he, or maybe you're older than me. What do you think's going to happen? An 8-year-old. I understand that she was probably upset that her daughter was upset, and that this boy hurt her. Maybe I don't know what's going through her head, but still, that you still comfort the child. She didn't comfort me at all. Just that cold yelling, But anyway, although it's hit and miss with my mother. Like I had a really good relationship with her, but then on the other hand, I didn't. She was there for me for so many different things. But anyway, taking me to therapy and stuff like that. But when that all started, I could go this other story. God, yeah, okay. I can go back to how I got involved with my ex-husband, and his parents. Now I'm from New York, up like upstate New York, like near Warwick, near the headquarters, and I lived like 35, 40 minutes from there. So, but anyway, his family came from Rockland County, New York. And they came up, and I met him when he was 14. I was 14. He was 6 months younger than me, so we're basically the same age. He wound up going to the same school I went to, public school. And they only lived a mile from us. And there was a family of 7 kids, and it was 2 girls, 5 boys. He was the second oldest, and the oldest was a girl, sister. And he pursued me and pursued me and pursued me. And I never liked him that way. I was always nice to him, and I felt, well, he's the new kid, so let me go. I'll be nice to him, go talk to him when we're at school and whatever. And but I didn't like him in the boyfriend way. I wasn't interested in him in that way. And he just kept pursuing me and pursuing me. And now, when you're growing up, you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're not allowed to have friends. You can't, oh God, I couldn't even. Like you can't have friends outside of the Watchtower. You can't do anything with them, hang out anywhere with anyone, worldly kids, So I basically really didn't have any friends. I had one girlfriend, who I still stay in touch with and we've known each other since we were like a year old. But she lived like 45 minutes from me. And back then you had long distance phone calls. You could live half a mile from someone and you get long distance charges. We didn't have cell phones and stuff like that, so I couldn't even call her because my dad would flip out with the charges. So there were times I'd have kids from school might call me. You weren't allowed to answer the phone in the house. God forbid you did that. So my parents would answer, and my dad would like, Jennifer, who do you want her for? And then I come back to school and they say, no, she can't talk on the phone. They're like, what do you go around it for? What do you get in trouble for? I didn't get in trouble for anything, and then I had to explain it to them, right? And without hurting their feelings that I'm not allowed to talk to you, So, anyway, so this guy, Joe, my ex-husband, would pursue me. He'd call me. My parents let me talk to him. He's a boy. They let me talk to him. And then when I made it clear that I wasn't, what he was wanting was a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend thing, and I was not interested. And so I tried to avoid him the best I could. I remember one night he called and my dad answers and he tells me to, pick up the phone. And I didn't. Like an hour went by and I let the phone just dangle. I never went to the phone. I'm just watching television or whatever. My dad comes back. He says, Jennifer, you didn't pick up that phone yet? I said, no. That's really rude. He's been sitting here. He stayed on that phone that whole time waiting for me to come to it. This is like, he didn't just hang up figuring I'm not going to answer. Like stupid. I mean, and so my dad basically made me talk to him. And so then I'm talking to him, and I says, and that night I decided, I said, you know what? I'm not allowed to have.
So Jennifer, was your husband ex-husband a Jehovah's Witness as well?
He never got baptized. His parents were though.
Oh,
and
okay.
at this time, I wasn't baptized.
Okay.
I wasn't baptized either at this time, and so he wound up. I said to myself, you know what? What does it freaking matter? So what? I don't like him. At least I can have someone I can talk to, and I'll have a boyfriend, and maybe I'll learn to like him. Because see, I know it sounds really crazy, but you got it. Like in my mind, I'm already dirty. I'm already stained. I'm a sinner. I'm never going to be saved by Jehovah because I've got these big secrets that I can't tell anybody about. That and at that time, the only secret I knew was my brother-in-law. And I didn't realize at that time back, about being 4 years old, but I could, so I couldn't tell anyone. And even if I did, I'd be blamed for it anyway. I mean, that's just what you just think, the guilty, you think it's all your fault.
Right. Jennifer, I just wanted to say, too, that a lot of the things that you mentioned, and probably the others would probably attest to this on this panel, being afraid to go to doctor's appointments, being afraid of being alone, feeling that you're dirty, feeling that you're unworthy, feeling that your parents won't, who are the adults in the situation, there to protect you, that you can't go to them. That is very common for people, child sex abuse survivors. So what would you say to a person watching our stream now, how you got through it? Because it's something that you never really get over.
A lot of time. Yeah. You're talking, I mean, this is going back around this time when he was pursuing me. I was 16. Wow. At this point. But he's an evil person, very evil. And I got on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist that I tell all about it, but where it's I call it my 4-year nightmare, because it was a nightmare.
Oh, I you know what? I would love for you to drop your YouTube channel. I think you were on our program before, but for those who don't know that you have a YouTube channel talking about your background.
It's BornInPixie.
BornInPixie.
But which the pixie thing is, my mom gave me that name when I was a kid because I looked like a pixie, and I've got a picture of me when I was 4 years old because I look at that on my YouTube channel, that the profile picture, because it the innocence, and I was I get the innocence of such a sweet looking little child, and all the pain that my life has been since then. I'm so I think I'm getting teared up, but it's I'm so past it. I am past it, but it's
let me just say this. Number one, we cry on a glass table. We'll tell you that up front. Secondly, we're actually, some of us are. That's why we're coming off screen. I want you to thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And thank you for being so open and so transparent. We're going to go to Chessa on a glass table, and you have your own story you want to share, right?
Well, a lot of people have heard me talk about my story before, but when we were talking about them calling the legal department and calling Bethel, I just wanted to say something really quickly. My father knew how to handle child sexual abuse cases, and I found this out later, but he actually had worked on some extensively for the society before I was even born. And so because of that, he knew the society's protocol, and he'd also gotten in touch with local police departments when local police departments would investigate child sexual abuse cases that my dad was working on. So he knew to take me to the doctor. He knew to get it verified. He knew to try to get to the person who hurt me and get them to come forward. So he knew all of this. So when he went and he called Bethel himself. He called, I believe, the service desk to tell them what had happened to me. The first brother that he spoke with there said, now Timothy, after he explained everything about his 5-year-old child just being raped, okay?
Wow.
And it's not like they didn't know who he was. Like, they knew who my dad was. He communicated with them before. The man on the phone said, now Timothy, do you realize how a lot of this is your fault? So imagine being the father of a 5-year-old daughter who had just been abused, and you're trying to do the best that you can to not only protect her, but protect other children. And you're calling the headquarters of this entire, this faith-based organization you belong to, that you believe has values, has morality. And the first person you speak with, who's supposed to be, the service desk is supposed to be mature. They handle a lot of the child sexual, if not all of it, other than the legal department. It's the service desk that gets contacted and has notoriously been contacted for child sexual abuse cases since this all started. So to have someone there tell a father that it's majoritively his fault,
right,
is absurd. It's absurd. So, we heard from Jennifer, you have lifelong trauma that is systemic, that stems from this. You have repeated patterns of behavior, normalized abusive behavior. Okay, they normalize the abuse. They make it your fault. They make it your parents' fault. They make it anybody but their responsibility or accountability to be able to protect kids. And because of that, countless children, and hopefully not, but future generations of children are affected by this.
Yeah. And Chessa, you have your own story. You're a child sex abuse survivor. I'll let you tell your own story.
I'll just
if you want to, or talk about the effects of it, or whatever it is that you want to share.
Well, I really related to Jennifer because, like I said, I was abused at 5 years old. It became normalized for me to be under, other men in the congregation, to be submissive, to accept when people told me to go to the phone. They expected me to go. I completely understand where she's coming from with that. And then on top of that, being a mother now and having to deal with the residuals of my situation, realizing that the people that I counted on the most completely failed me. The people who said that they were there, the organization comes even above a father's role. If a judicial committee decides that a child needs to be disciplined for something, so to say, maybe a child is baptized, 14, gets in trouble, even if the father or the mother doesn't want that child to be disciplined, it is up to the elders in that congregation to do so. So to have people who are even above the head of your family completely fail you, and then having to learn how to be a parent, how do you protect your children, what protocols do you follow, having to deal with that trauma, check the doors every night. I don't sleep. And I was actually thinking about it last night because I've been thinking about this live stream for a while. But you really don't sleep, and none of my family slept after I was abused. My mom still doesn't, my dad didn't up until the day he died. Like, you can't sleep after this. You don't feel safe. So to have generations of people who have gone through this silently in our culture and in other cultures, and have this legislation, this policy that enables this behavior, that covers over this behavior, untold amounts of people have been affected by this. It's a culture.
So I didn't actually plan on sharing any of my story, but I just, y'all are so brave. I will say, I'll tell you how it affected me. I'll say that this person was an elder son. I will say that this person was a member of my family. I will say that I was told, well, your uncle just became elder. Are you sure that's what you want to do? I'm not saying that to report it, but if you do this, he'll lose his position. Think about that. And as that, given that as a child, it was like, it was almost like I had to make a decision between, at a very young age, the organization or my family. I had to think about how hard he worked to become an elder, like as if that was something that I should have had as a child. I would say that it was multiple members of my family. Um, I will also say that I identify a lot of the things what Jennifer said because it was so traumatic for me that if I could just keep it real, that I didn't even consummate my marriage until a month and a half after because I was just terrified of uh, any type of sexual contact, anyone touching me or anything like that. And it was very hard for me because I would see my abuser at the assemblies. And I remember asking to go to another assembly. And after even telling my mom why, she insisted that we had to go to this assembly because we were assigned to that assembly. And so even after me deciding not to report the abuse, my family just kept it as a secret. It was just like a secret. Something that it was really hard for me to carry because, you know, I remember being even in the like medical exams was hard for me. Like as Jennifer was saying, all of that comes with it. And just the culture of silence, especially if you were a person, like I was a child that was outgoing and talkative, pretty much like the Spencer y'all see now, I guess. That's because I've come out on the other side of it. But when that happened to me, I shut down. I was a total different person. I was very distrustful of people, very distrustful of men, because it was repeated abuse, not by the same person, but, you know, when I was 5, I was abused by a family member who wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. So my mom, who was also molested when she was younger, I think she just felt like a failure because she thought she did everything she could to shield us from the abuse. And I just think when I was telling her about it, she just couldn't handle it. It wasn't registering. I think she felt for me, but at the same time, she had just joined this new religion. And she just was torn. And of course, the added pressure of somehow or another that we had to, as women, you feel like you have to, the pressure of making sure that the men keep their positions. I don't even know why that's even a thing, especially if you're a wife. And so for me, it was really hard for me to hear, even as a married person. I hope I don't get emotional about this, but it was hard for me to hear elders tell me, well, you need to render your husband your due. And I'm thinking like, and I couldn't tell them why it was so hard for me to do that. You know, it was just more like it was like almost forced upon me that it was something that I had to do. And to me, to feel like a failure because I felt like, here's this man that I love and I can't even go there. Well, as you know, I got 2 kids, so I got over that eventually at some point. But it was hard to, it's still hard to talk about. I don't, because I do have a lot of, you know, out of fear, because I have a lot of family on my page now for whatever reason. If y'all watching, I'm sorry. And it just changed the dynamic of me just feeling like I just needed to pour myself more into the organization and to do more. So I was always an overachiever. So, at 5, I joined the school. 8, I was a publisher. 11, I was baptized. 12, I was pioneering. You know, I literally poured myself into the congregation and poured myself into organization. I was one of the kids that really believed the organization. I really believed that the governing body was sent by God. I really believed all of those things. So when they were telling me that Jehovah would handle it, I truly believe Jehovah would handle it. And one of the things that I contribute about 3.5 years ago, when my family friend committed suicide over the shunning, and I was in the hospital, that was one of the things that I had to work through and work out. One of the things that I had to talk about, and I think I've shared intimate details with some of you ladies on the glass table. And I just want to tell you now, if you're in the spot that I'm in, like Jennifer, having reoccurring dreams, because that's what's happening to me now, And even in preparation to the show, it just was this dust up of feelings that I didn't know where to put, like Chessa was saying. There were members of my family who turned to drugs, instead of getting help. And to this day are being blamed and being labeled as an apostate. And and the family members who don't even know why this person feels that way. If you're in my spot, therapy. I start therapy on Monday. So I feel like, I think in the presentation we were talking about, there's so many people that don't want to talk about it, that don't want to bring up the trauma, who don't want to relive it all over again, and then to have to go through a religion or a organization structure that is set up for you to fail as a victim. I think I didn't know anything about cases or anything when this happened to me, or that it was happening to other people, or even that it happened to other people in my family, because I carried the guilt for a long time that if I would have spoke up, maybe it wouldn't have happened to other family members. So I applaud everybody on this panel who were courageous enough to face the organization, because there was little girls like me who thought, okay, well, no, I'll just go out and field service more, or I will just go to the hall more, and that it will go away. And it didn't.
If I can jump in really quick, Spence, and first say you're so freaking strong.
Thank you.
And I really admire you. And I want to let you know, and I want to let everybody else know that's watching, it took me 20 years to talk about this publicly. And the reason why I did was the realization that this is, it's a huge issue. This is a global, giant, glaring issue full of children who have been affected, including us. And, if you're someone who's looking to speak out, or you're looking to talk, I want to say first, when I went to Mark Rotzi's rally in Pennsylvania, I think it was 2018, there was a statistic that it takes someone until about the age of 55 to come out about sexual abuse, if they do it all. They have to get to a place in their life that is not only somewhat safe, most of the time their abusers are passed away by the time they feel comfortable enough to come out with this. There's statutes of limitations that stop people from coming out about this. There's family pressure. There's organizational pressure that silences people because they feel like if they speak out about being abused, they're going to lose their family. This is such a dynamic issue. And if you want to speak out, if you feel like you're in a place where you want to start going to therapy, or where you want to talk to a lawyer, or where you want to be able to tell your story, please contact one of us, contact me, because I want to help you do that in a way that's going to be safe for you. Okay? Because there's so many people who come out and they tell their story and they tell their details. It can affect a case. If you decide to take a case to court and you tell too many details in the beginning, it could affect your case. It could affect your family. It could affect your mental health. So, we want to make sure that people, when they decide that they're comfortable to speak out about this in some way, are able to do it in a way that's not only going to be effective if they want it to be, but also that it's safe for them. Your safety is a priority. Even when you feel like you're angry and you need people to know this, your safety is still at risk. So, please contact us. We are more than here for you. Yeah. And, whenever you're ready, no pressure, right?
Yeah. And the thing about it puts you stories, when you hear other people's stories, it puts you right back there. I feel like, honestly, I'm sitting here with this headphone and this little dress on, but I honestly feel like I'm 5 years old again sitting here. So the trauma never goes away. We're going to, I don't know if Mala and Emma want to interject with anything before we move on to introduce our next guest.
I just want to say that all of you ladies and all of you people in the comments standing up about your experiences and your stories and even just your thoughts, and even just by helping others, just by being there for us. I see my friend joined there for a second, and I'm not sure if he left or not because he's sensitive about this issue, but people like him, people like you ladies, are what runs this. And the more we speak on this, the more good it will do. And I appreciate and admire all of you so fucking much for doing what you do every day and taking this control back by going to therapy, by addressing it in private, in public, by naming your abusers, and by taking steps to heal and move forward and create a better world for your children and yourselves and other women around you. Because I can attest to this, that all of these women in this screen right now, and those who we heard throughout the day, they truly strive to uplift women all the fucking time.
Whew, okay. Emma?
Okay, so if I cannot be emotional, takes a lot to get me to not go. Like, thank you to you guys for telling your story. Thank you to Shelly, who's coming up to tell her story. Thank you to every single victim that has allowed me to share their story. I don't have a personal one, but my friend told me a few years ago that she was abused by her Jehovah's Witness father. Her mother groomed her for him. She went to the elders. They called her a liar. And they left her in that situation. It wasn't until years and years later, I think she did manage to take him to court. And because it had been so long, he just got some litter picking or whatever kind of, I think he just got some, is it probation? Nothing worthy of the crime that he did. And part of my activism I do for her, because like it happened to people that I personally know. So anybody still that wants me to put their stories out there, it can be anonymous. You can put your name to it and I'll share it on Twitter, Facebook, because we need to get victims' stories out there.
I just want to say before we introduce Shelly that as much as I'm sitting here crying about my own situation, I was one of those people in the congregation who thought that this one girl was lying. She said that she was raped and she had a child as a product of rape. And I was young and my mother was saying, oh no, people lie about it. And some women do. But you absolutely should believe a woman when they say that they have been raped or sexually assaulted or something in that kind of way, and until otherwise. And that's not what happens within the Jehovah's Witness organization. As you see with Emma, you hear all the other stories. You are put on trial. You are the one that, and I think that in my case, it was just, I didn't know, all that it wouldn't tell about telling everybody, but I was just hushed. It was just like, oh my gosh, instead of them feeling sorry for me, which I do think my mother did, because she started drinking really heavy afterward, so for a long time. But I think that it's a ripple effect on everybody in the family. And I want to get to one of our stories today. BCG, I know we're almost at the 2-hour mark. We've shared a lot of stories and laid the foundation for the Royal Commission. For those who are not familiar with it, believe it or not, there are some newer ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are not aware of the Royal Commission. I just came across a few this week. I think I was telling you guys about one of the shows had no idea about it. So let's go ahead and introduce BCG. But before we do, I'm calling her BCG. Now, her name is not BCG. It is Shelly. Her name is Shelly. But we want to tell a little bit of her story before she actually comes on. Molly, did you want to start us off?
I can, for sure. Also, as I find our notes, can I just say about, the false accusations, it's about 2 to 4% that are unfounded, like they don't have physical evidence. So that doesn't mean that they were lying, it just means that they didn't have the physical evidence of DNA or a recording or like a bazillion witnesses. So that doesn't mean that they were necessarily lying, it just means that they could not gather enough evidence for a court case. And I think that's something that I wanted to say before we move on. So
I could put it up on the screen if that helps out.
you can. I got it. So BCG was one of the 2 survivors who gave evidence at the public ARC hearing. She was 17 when she was sexually abused by her father on a number of occasions, and she initially tried to speak about it to 2 elders, Elder Ali and Elder Bovdich, and she also approached Bovdich's wife. She told all 3, "I want to talk to you about things in my family that you don't know about what my father is doing." Both elders refused to speak to her before she spoke to her father, or without her father being present. Elder Ali agreed that to require a person to speak to her father in the first instance was consistent with the teachings of the organization. Then obviously the ARC happened, so she told her story. She was interviewed on her own by the elders Ali and Vodic on a number of occasions, and she said that she had nobody to support her during the committee interview process, and that the elders offered no emotional support or protection, which we can obviously tell by the other stories too, and the elders handbook. And on at least one occasion, her father was also present. And instead of being protected and supported as a victim of sexual abuse, she felt that the elders sat in judgment of her credibility and made her feel like she's to blame for anything that happened. She said that at one of the meetings, the elders required her to directly confront her father about her allegations. She said that when her father was brought into the room, she felt extremely terrified. In the meeting with her father threatened her verbally and physically and blamed her for seducing him. And so she and her mother went to the elders to tell them about the allegations that BCG's younger sisters made against their father, but the elders did not take those allegations into account when they considered BCG's own allegations. So this is an example how even when there is more than 2 witnesses, they will twist it just so they can keep these men in the congregations. And Mr. DeRoy told her that the elders could not consider the evidence of her sister's abuse as they were too young to know what they were talking about, and they were not witnesses to the same event. The handwritten notes that Elder Ali took during the judicial committee appears to record BCG's mother telling the committee that their father has abused 2 younger children, possibly 2 at age 2, and the Watchtower submitted that BCG's allegations about her younger sisters were hearsay allegations. There is no evidence before the Royal Commission.
Sorry about that.
You good? And when they were confronted with the allegations, her father initially denied. He did not confess. He did confess, but not directly to the committee, but to a third party. He was disfellowshipped not on grounds of child sex abuse, but on grounds of loose conduct in relation to extramarital relationships for lying about that relationship. Despite the fact they believed BCG's allegations were true, they concluded that without the confession by her father, they were bound by the 2-witness rule, biblical principles, and did not have enough evidence to take action. Shortly after her father appealed the decision to disfellowship him, an appeal committee was convened. BCG was called to appear alone before the appeal committee, although no one explained to her why. The elders asked her questions, and she had to say everything about the abuse all over again. Her father was again present in the room when she appeared before the committee. He confessed.
You want to keep going, Molly? You're doing so well.
Sure. Sorry.
Can you keep
This
going?
story just, for sure, just needed a second to gather myself because I have read the ARC stories, but every time I do it, just gets me all kinds of mad and sad and protective over these people, because we should take this seriously, even if there's no evidence, and if it turns out to be a lie, then we cannot address it accordingly. But until it is proven, it's innocent until proven guilty, and guilty until proven innocent too on the same hand. So I do believe that's an important factor. So the appeal committee upheld the decision to disfellowship him for loose conduct and lying, and added the ground of porneia to reflect his confession to gross sexual acts against BCG on 5 or 6 occasions. Despite his admission to the appeal committee, they did not consider reporting the matter to the police. Of course, they didn't. As a result of this, a man they knew to have confessed to child sex abuse was left at large in the community. Less than 8 months after the appeal committee's decision to disfellowship, he applied for reinstatement. BCG wrote to the branch office expressing concern about her father's premature reinstatement, that she was concerned he would sexually abuse other children within the organization. The branch office responded to BCG, telling her that they would investigate the matter and counseled her to have faith in Jehovah and the elders of the congregation. There is no evidence that the organization took action. The service desk at the branch office wrote to the body of elders asking whether the fact that he had not apologized to BCG was a factor taken into consideration in the decision to reinstate him. BCG decided to leave the Jehovah's Witness organization. As a result, she was shunned, ostracized, and actively avoided by members of her local congregation. And after leaving, BCG reported to the police. The first trial resulted in a hung jury. The second trial was declared mistrial, and the third trial in 2004, he was convicted for the unlawful and indecent assault, attempted rape of BCG, and was sentenced to 3 years of imprisonment. In his congregation, he was restricted from answering at the meetings and giving talks, but the others were not aware of the reason why he was restricted, and they were not aware of any reason to restrict contact with children, despite his established history of child abuse, and they only became aware of his history of child sexual abuse when the criminal proceedings were commenced against him. They failed to take precautions to protect the children in the congregation from the risk of sex abuse. In 2003, despite accepting the truth of the allegations of his 3 daughters, the service desk instructed that they will be disfellowshipped and the elders disfellowshipped him again for deliberate malicious lying and bearing false witness, and not for child sex abuse. He continued to make repeated applications for reinstatement. Direction has been given to the elders that until he fully acknowledges his sins of child abuse and lying in connection to these offenses, it would be difficult for the committees or the victims to consider that he was repentant. In all of the correspondence in evidence, there does not appear to be a single reference of the consideration of child safety in discussions about whether or not he should be reinstated. BCG told the Royal Commission that during the criminal proceedings against her father, she was terrified that Jehovah would kill her for having reported to the police and for bringing reproach upon Jehovah's name. And this is what no one should be made to feel this way. No one. Absolutely no one. And I just hope that I do you justice, Shelly.
Well, we do have Shelly here, so we're gonna go ahead and bring Shelly on. Shelly has a video that she wants us to watch. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and bring Shelly on, and then we're gonna go ahead and watch the video. Hi, Shelly. You have been hanging with us for 2 hours.
That's
Hi,
fine.
Shelly.
I would
Thank you
have
so
all the
much.
time in the world to speak to you, so thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for being here and for trusting us to share your story.
Yes. Thank
If
you.
I could just say a few thank yous to a few people.
Mhm.
I first of all want to say thank you to each of you for continuing to advocate for child sexual abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses religion and, across all religious institutions. Thank you for being brave and courageous to share your stories, Jennifer, and each of you for what you've shared, because I know it's really difficult to do. I wanted to also applaud all of those in the community that have shared their stories and advocated for change in the Jehovah's Witnesses religion since the Royal Commission. I also wanted to thank those people that contributed, the silent heroes of the Royal Commission that you never hear about. So when I was at the Royal Commission, a lot of people sent in a lot of information, and I'm not talking just from Australia, I'm talking internationally. They were the ones that assisted the Royal Commission in making it a success. And for each of those people that also reported their stories to the Royal Commission, the victims in the Royal Commission and the victims from across all religious institutions, those people, I would like to thank those people for making it a success, because without you, the Royal Commission would not have been successful. And something else I wanted to share with you is that, first of all, I want everybody to know that my story of abuse is not the worst by a long shot. It is just a drop in the bucket. A drop in the bucket for a lot of other people. And you listen to Jennifer's story and Spencer's story and Chessa's story and Molly's story and Emma's friend's story. There are so many of us that have had this happen to us. And I just wanted to reassure everybody that the reason why my story was chosen for the Royal Commission was because I had documented evidence, that's all. It wasn't the worst. And I really wish it had somebody who had the worst experience could have been there, but they asked me to give evidence because I had written to the society and I had been through the 2 judicial committee meetings and I had made a criminal complaint to police and went through court. And that's why they wanted to use my story. So for all of you out there that you might feel that your story is insignificant, it's not like that. Not like that at all. Everybody's story is important. I don't care whether your trust was taken you from 1 moment or 10 moments or for years. It's all relevant. So I wanted to say thank you to each of you for doing for being strong and courageous and speaking about it, because it's important to change. It's important. One other thing I need to say is that my views on this live feed are my own personal views and they come from my own personal experience. It's not legal advice. It's just my own personal experience. And so if we could just remember that when I'm talking.
Well, thank you so much, Shelly, for that opening. We told a little bit of your a lot of your story already, and I'm sure we didn't scratch the surface.
Great. Well, I don't have to say it again. So thank you. Thank you, Molly. You did an awesome job.
Thank
So I
you.
want to
Get together.
I want to give you the floor to say whatever you want to say at this time. I know that we talked a little bit before. We actually came on to the line. So I guess we're talking about, backlash. I mean, how did you cope with the backlash that you received from the
Oh my gosh.
everywhere? It seemed like all sides.
I don't know what to say. The backlash of the Royal Commission has absolutely destroyed my life. I will say that. I have been re-victimised In my employment, I have been re-victimized by people in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. I have lost contact with my sisters because I continue to speak against the Jehovah's Witnesses. My aunt, who said she would never, ever, ever back my mother, chose to back my mother. So it's not just affected my life, it's affected my life of my children. I studied since 2011. I averaged about 4 hours sleep a night to get that degree. And the reason why I wanted to get my law degree was to advocate for victims of child sexual abuse. And unfortunately, it's now an issue. So because of the re-victimization of people in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, particularly in Australia, and me having to defend myself about whether or not I gave consent for certain information to be shared with the Royal Commission, I now have chosen to come public, to clear my name so I can continue practicing law, to make it very, very clear that as much as there's positive effects coming from the Royal Commission, there's also very, very, very negative effects coming from the Royal Commission, and a lot of people exploiting the stories of survivors instead of supporting them. So what I mean by that is a lot of people, and you know what the ex-Jehovah's Witness community is like. It is like, gossip central, if I could say that. So a lot of people knew of other people's stories, and unfortunately, these stories are being shared without the consent of the victims. And I'll talk about a lot of that later, but I think, Spencer, do we want to talk some positives first? So I've lost
wherever you want to start.
Okay. Do you want to? Okay.
Start with the consent video?
Yes. So one of the great things about studying law is that, you learn about consent in a legal perspective. So one of the consent videos that I like to show, and this is my most favorite video, and when I saw this video, it's talking about the difference between consensual sex and rape. So when are those lines legally blurred? Like, is it before, after? Has somebody said it? Have they not said it? So that's really what this is talking about. But what I'd like the viewers to look at is how this concept of consent, I mean, it's as simple as a cup of tea. I often think about, my gosh, I invaded other people's privacy when I went preaching on a Sunday. I went into the privacy of their yard. I'm going, but hey, you wanted to talk to me the other week about this. I'm here for a return visit. And they would overcome their objections and say, hey, look, they'd be really polite to us as Jehovah's Witnesses and say, hey, I'm not really interested. I've got my own religion. But unfortunately, the Watchtower has indoctrinated us with abusive behaviour. Now, what you're seeing in here as the alternative is similar to what you spoke about earlier, Spencer, is about abusive behaviour. So abusive behaviour is when you're not allowing another person to have a choice, whether that be a choice about what they wear, what medical treatment they receive, whether or not they want to hear the Jehovah's Witness message, and they go, hey, well, we're not really interested, So this is the flip side of it. So when you're looking at this, try and take a different perspective rather than just a cup of tea or rape. Think about when a person expresses their right to consent as to whether or not they want to share explicit details of their sexual assault. And you've heard today how devastating and how traumatic it has been for victims, what they've already been through, and how much their consent has been ripped away from them, not once, but over and over and over in their lives. This is important to survivors. And I say, and I want to just make this really clear, like victims of consent, I don't consider myself a survivor because, the effects of child sexual abuse, and I'm sure each of you will agree with me on this, the effects of not being able to sleep through one night,
right,
goes right through your life. It is not over. I struggle with the feelings of self-harm every single day of my life. I have to fight it. I have strategies in place, and I've successfully done that. But what is concerning to me is that people think, hey, you know, you've survived the actual assault, but the effects of having your trust ripped away from you, from your parents, from your family, from your religion, and being shoved under the carpet, or you being silenced, or just not acknowledged, or it, as Chessa said, as it being normalized to you, those effects continue extremely. They continue right throughout your life. They don't stop after the abuse has stopped. It continues. And we all, and this is what I would love to educate the ex-Jehovah's Witness community about, we struggle with these things every single day of my life, each of your lives. I'm not alone. Each of us have this. And while we're looking at the video of consent, I want you all to think about the effects of the Royal Commission, okay? The Royal Commission has been the biggest thing across Australia, across the world, that has damaged the Watchtower. You know what it was about? It was about two. It was only two victims. It is just two of us that came forward and told our story. That was it. You know why it's so powerful? It is powerful because it is offensive and it is repugnant to wider society that people would cover up instances of child sexual abuse. That's why it's powerful. And it's because it's a crime. It is a crime, and it should not be tolerated, and people should not be staying silent. The Royal Commission, and I'll explain before we start this video how the Royal Commission was developed. There are significant people in Australia that have had and long advocated for child sexual abuse in religious institutions, not the Jehovah's Witnesses. We're a very tiny, tiny institution. Chrissy Foster led the way with the advocacy of child abuse in religious institutions. Her daughters were assaulted in the Catholic institution by priests. She is the one that led the way. All of the people, the Clan Network, the Blue Knot Association, so not Jehovah's Witnesses, other people have led the way, and they've approached the government, and the government has heard the outcry of this, and they have decided, and that was when Julia Gillard was in government, and she instituted the Royal Commission. So she gave permission for the government to spend an exorbitant amount of money on investigating what happened in religious institutions. Now, the Royal Commission is a credible legal institution, one of the highest credible institutions in Australia. They have phenomenal powers to subpoena records and bring all of this information in and to put it out there for the public. If you were in a court case, if one person just went to the police and reported and went to court, you would have to have a very good reason, and you'd have to approach the court for a subpoena to get information. So one of the benefits of the Royal Commission is that their wide investigative powers. They can subpoena anyone to come to the Royal Commission and answer. They can subpoena any record. And that's exactly what they did. They subpoenaed all of the elders' handbooks, the secret documents, their letters, and they put them all in the exhibit list. That's how come the Royal Commission is amazing. So when the Royal Commission set their terms of reference, I know a lot of people are claiming that they set the terms of reference, but they did not. It was Julia Gillard who set the terms of reference and their round table. Yes, other people had an input, and yes, other people can write a letter, but unless you're specifically mentioned in any of their documents, you have not contributed to setting the terms of reference for a Royal Commission. People can claim all they want, and I know there's a lot of people that have claimed that, but these are the facts. So the Royal Commission then started commencing, and they looked into a wide range of institutions, and they wanted to know, the key issue was how they responded to allegations of child sexual abuse. Now, in Australia, we have mandatory reporting laws they're not crimes. They're just mandatory reporting laws. They get demerit points, or they pay a fine because they haven't reported. What you want to look at in each country and each state is the criminal legislation, because those are crimes. Part of my strategy with this whole entire process was to look at criminal legislation and have a look at that, because what happens is, and as we've seen in the Candace Conti case, all of the other civil cases in America, a civil case is a case that a person will bring to the court because they've been harmed in some way. So it might be like a negligence or malice case. Now, what happens in those instances is you have to pay for your lawyer and they will take a cut. So you're suing the Jehovah's Witness organization because they've wronged you in some way. You pay for it. But what happens is, as a follow-on effect of that, is that when you're in court, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they will throw all of their money at that case. And so then it's an issue between, who's got the most money? Is it Jehovah's Witnesses or is it the lawyer? And quite often, because it's a novel case, the lawyers are really not prepared to do it. Jehovah's Witnesses generally win out on those cases. So part of the strategy, and I started studying law well and truly before I gave evidence at the Royal Commission, was to advocate for child sexual abuse. I did 3 criminal trials. I saw it firsthand myself. And while they were really, really good, I think they lacked a knowledge of how the religious beliefs worked in those instances. And I'll talk about that a bit later. So what a lot of people don't know is that when I decided to give evidence for the Royal Commission, I had already started studying law, and I had been accepted phenomenally. I don't even know how I did this. I only received a year 10 education at school. So I think it's called like sophomore, is it in America? Is it called sophomore, Spencer? I don't know.
Yes, which is sophomore year, and you mean in high school?
So sophomore year in America. So I really have not had like a higher education. It's a very basic education. Anyway, I saved up money for my son to go to university, my eldest son, and he really mucked around at university. And I said to him, I was a bit upset at him. I was giving him one of those JW lectures. And I said to him, like, hey, what are you doing? I saved $2 a week for you for the last so many years so you could attend university. Like, how could you mess this up? He said to me, well, Mum, it's really my life. It's my life. And he says that it's my choice on what I want to do. And I go, yeah, I understand it's your choice, but I'm trying to help you achieve the things that I've never had. I've never had the luxury. And I can say this for a lot of victims and a lot of people who've left the Jehovah's Witnesses, we've given up our education. We've given up our choices for a career. We've lost everything in that. Our whole lives now, we are in a life of poverty and we're in a life of uneducated type people, which is very easy to indoctrinate, by the way, which is one of the reasons why they do that, in my opinion. Anyway, getting back to the story. My son said to me, well, Mum, if you really, he's deflecting because he really doesn't want to have to answer for his own issues of why he partied at university instead of going to class. Anyway, he said to me, Mum, if you want to go to university, why don't you go? You've got the money, go to university. I said, well, you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe I'll show you how it's done, Bo, because, opportunities don't come by all the time. And anyway, I decided from that point forward to apply for university. I didn't know how it was going to go. I had a hairdressing business at the time, my own business, and I decided to tell some of my clients, hey, look, I was thinking about going to university. And unfortunately, those people said to me, well, Shelly, you can't go to university. And I said, well, why not? And they said, you know, I had a lot of high class clientele, so they were used to having their children in private schools and all of this. I said, why not? And you can't just go because you want to go. I said, you know what? Watch me then. Watch me. So I applied for it, and I thought to myself, if I get into university, I'm going to do it. I don't want to do a bridging course. If I have to do a bridging course, I'm not going to do that. I just want to get in just from me. Do you know what? They accepted me. Could not believe it. Floored me. So I didn't apply for law straight away because I didn't think I was smart enough for law. I love the law. Always wanted to be a lawyer. Always wanted to argue. Always loved and admired the women who were strong enough to argue in court. And I wanted to do that, but I didn't think I was smart enough. You know, not a lot of self-esteem. So what happened was I decided to go for psychology first. I had hairdressing. I talked to women for the last 20 years. You know, I mean, now it's been 20 years, day in, day out. I'm in their close personal contact. You hear everything. You pick up so much information, nonverbal communication. I know women. I can talk to them. I figured that I could talk psychology. You know, I understand. I could pick up whether or not people have been abused or they've been through some difficult process just by speaking to them within 5 minutes, which is phenomenal. And saying that, each of us, any victim of child sexual abuse, domestic violence, any type of abuse, I don't want you to think that it's just me. No. Each of you have this resilience. If you have made it this far, if you have survived the abuse and you haven't committed suicide or you're not being successful, you are as strong as me. You have the voice. You've got it all inside of you, and you just have to tap into it. You just have to tap into it. You have been fighting, Chessa, since you were 5. You've been fighting this since you were 5. You have the resilience. You have the power in you. You fought the disbelief in your own mind and the indoctrination of the religion. You fought this. You fought your parents. You're going, no, this is true. This is Jennifer. You fought the dreams. You're going, no, this is actually true. You know that it's true. You're strong. You have resilience. And that is something which you may not realize, but everybody else in the world, when I went to university, everybody else doesn't have this resilience. I believe that we are way more intelligent than the normal person. We pick up on non-verbal signs of communication well and truly before anybody else does. I don't know if each of you can understand what I'm talking about, but we are assessing people left, right, and center. We're looking at whether or not they speak to us and they look us in the eyes. We're looking at their gestures, their hand movements, how they touch us, what they do. We're assessing people 24/7. Our brain never shuts down because we have always had to protect ourselves. We can't rely on parents. We can't rely on police. We can't rely on elders. We can't rely on adults. We've learned to protect ourselves. And then one of those side effects, and we might sometimes view it as a bad thing. I don't want you to view it as a bad thing anymore. I want you to view it as a positive thing. We have more intelligence than the average person, and you have got way more resilience than anybody else. So you know what? When it came to university, I just had to, you know, all that studying at the religion, sitting down, taking notes. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. Oh, all that came in handy. I could sit through a 2-hour lecture and I could take notes and I knew how to do it. And guess what? I got invited to the International Honor Students Association because my grades were so high that I ended up in the top 6% of international students. So you know what? All of you, I want you to try and educate yourselves, be social workers, be psychologists, be lawyers, you know, all these other people in the industry, and if any of you've gone to social workers and psychologists, you will know that these people have learnt this generally from a book. Yes, the suicidal thoughts. Who is that? BornInPixie. Yes.
That's Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Is that okay? And I know about that. I struggle with that every single day. It's difficult to do, but I try and hang on to something that keeps me grounded and it keeps me here. And I will say that my children, I got married at 18. You know that the abuse occurred at 17. I got married at 18. From 18, I think I was 20 something when I had my first son, and that was Bo Daniel, and he kept me here. He kept me here. He kept me grounded. He kept me responsible. So sometimes responsibilities are actually a really good thing because they keep you. All I wanted to be was the best mother. I just wanted to be better than my mother. I wanted to teach him, protect him, and look after him better than my mother did. That's all. That was all I wanted to do. And I'm sure you can all relate to that. Anyway, going back to education. I really respect lawyers for what they do in court, particularly police prosecutors and DPP. Those people, they fight this stuff day in, day out. But, you know, if somebody had just had, how can I say, this much knowledge of the religion, this could have been dealt with like 20 years ago. Instead, it was not. The court ignored the Jehovah's Witnesses religion when I went to court. They actually had a voir dire which excluded all of the religious processes in court. So the lawyers, the judge, boom, first trial, actually before the first trial. So the Royal Commission got this wrong. It wasn't the Royal Commission, it was the Jehovah's Witnesses response. They got it wrong. They actually, those elders never participated in the trials. They, most of them were captured beforehand in something called a voir dire, which is a legal argument, and the judge ruled everything out. So I could not mention so many years on that I had already reported this so many years ago. So all of a sudden, the jury think that I am speaking about, well, I've all of a sudden remembered something that's just occurred so many years ago. Okay, so that's what the jury was led to believe in my criminal cases. And I'll talk about that again at another point. But anyway, just wanted to explain how the Royal Commission happened, what their powers are, and what the Royal Commission first of all started to do was make recommendations. So they, after they've gathered all of the evidence and they picked people to give evidence, they make recommendations. Now, the recommendations are not something that is set in stone, and a lot of people go, well, what's the government doing? And that's exactly a very good point, because the government is not, while the Royal Commission can make recommendations, it's a government in power at that point in time that need to accept those recommendations and put them into legislation. If they don't do that, well, then nothing happens, nothing changes. So that's where we come to now. And I know I went off on a great big tangent, and it's one of my issues I do.
No, you're doing good, girl. We back here. Just want to let you know we back in the background.
Thank you to everybody, and I just wanted to let everybody know, you know, any victims out there. And the reason why I say victim is because I've not survived this. I haven't survived. I'm still surviving it. I still consider, so if I've not survived it, I think the word personally for me, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the word survivor does not describe what we've been through, and I think it underestimates the child abuse and the effects of child abuse. It doesn't describe it enough. So that's why I still use the term victim. So I hope it doesn't offend people, because I'm still struggling with it 20-something years later. And each of you today have said the same thing. So no offense to anyone if I use the term victim. That's why I use it.
You are so strong. Thank you so much for the advice that you've given us. I guess, Shelly, do you want to play the consent video for our audience, or do you just want to let them to see it later? That's up to you.
So I suppose before I do that,
okay.
Before I do that, I just want to say, since we're on the topic of court cases and everything like that, so I've been through court cases myself, 3 of them. One thing that I really want to express, and I tried to educate Lloyd Evans on this, I actually humbled myself to go talk to him, swallowed my pride, to try and get this message out to the community. Like, there's positive effects of the Royal Commission, there's also some negatives. So I get that everybody wants to share their story, and I get that, and I did say in my statement, I want victims to come forward and report their stories. Unfortunately, what's happening is, in the communities, some people, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, are exploiting victim stories. They're taking them without consent, and they're using them to puff themselves up and make them bigger than what they are. Because let's face it, I don't know about each of you, but if you see somebody with all these stories about child sexual abuse survivors. Now, hang on, before I say this, some people go to great lengths to obtain consent. I know Silent Lambs does that. They obtain consent of their victims prior to publishing their stories, and those stories have been published with the explicit consent of those people. Now, I know that's what attracted me to Emma on her Twitter feed. She put some stories out there, and she's got permission. She's de-identified them completely. The people are happy with them, and she reproduces them to make awareness. Now, I'm not saying don't say anything, but if you're going to say it, please don't put any identifying information in these stories, because what happens is, when you do get to court, you think about it, historical case of sexual abuse. Do you have any other forms of evidence? And what I mean by evidence, I'm talking about documented evidence, like notes from the Judicial Committee. Do you have them? Do you have any DNA evidence? Did you go to the hospital? Did you get a rape kit done? I'm talking about hardcore evidence. So either documented, eyewitnesses, which is what the Jehovah's Witnesses talk about. Do you have something? Did you have a diary where you wrote everything down? Did you take a photograph of your underwear afterwards? I'm talking hardcore evidence. If you don't have hardcore evidence, what happens is, when you do get to court, it becomes he said, she said, which is what the Jehovah's Witnesses talk about. So when you're in a court of law, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that sexual assault occurred. You need 12 jury, I think it's the same in America, you need 12 jury members to believe you beyond a reasonable doubt that person's guilty. So the key thing that is on the table here is your credibility. It's your credibility. Have you lied? Are you doing this for money? Have you been inconsistent in your stories? Because I had those questions asked of me over and over, and they capitalized on them. So if you have 2 or 3 versions, or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, 10 versions of your story out there, what happens is your credibility. If I was a defense lawyer, I would find those stories and I'd use them against you in a court of law, because my goal is to destroy your credibility. If you report or put your story out there and you say explicit details to identify explicit details that are going to be used in court, you know what? You're damaging your case. Now, I went to Lloyd in Sydney after all the other issues that we had with covert fade, whatever, and I tried to educate him on how important it is not to share explicit details. I asked him to, obtain consent, and in the process of obtaining consent, that he educate those people who are sharing the stories. If you are going to share the story, and if you want to use it, please educate that person and go, you know what? Be very careful that you don't share explicit details because it might be used against you. Should you at any point in the future decide a civil claim or a criminal claim, it could be used against you. I'm not saying it will, I'm saying it could, because they did that in my case. Okay, so I'm just trying to protect you all. You do not need, and I tried to explain to Lloyd that the most important thing to victims is justice and the right to be heard. Would you all agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you survive to now, you want justice. You want your time to take a swipe at the Watchtower for causing so much damage, and your perpetrator for causing so much damage to your life. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is important to victims, and this is what I'm trying to educate the community about. But unfortunately, I just get shut down all the time. I get attacked by all the followers. I mean, in Australia, I don't trust any of those people in Australia. Any ex-JWs in Australia are really, there's a couple singular people, but not the groups, not anyone. So that's why I'm speaking to America, because I'm trying to educate victims and activists on what's important at the end of the day. And it's to look after you, because I've been through it. I know.
Shelly, since we're talking about victim stories and you giving advice on what to share and what not to share and how to share, is there anything you think personally you probably would have done differently had you had it over, or you wish the Royal Commission would have done differently?
Okay. While there's positive effects of the Royal Commission, which we'll probably talk about, we might end on that note, which would be good. But the negative effects of the Royal Commission, so I don't know if anybody's seen my Twitter rants, because I get so frustrated.
That's how I found you, honey, because I was scrolling through my feed and I said, Emma, do you see this? And everybody else kind of connected and knew who you were. And I'm thinking, like, what is going on here?
She's like crazy. Has she like lost the plot? Okay.
No, I didn't think that at all. I was trying to find the person you was talking about. I'm like, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Really use anybody's name.
We didn't think you were crazy. We were just basically like, who's giving this girl shit? We need to find out what's going on here.
Oh my God, if you knew the shit that I had dealt with, you'd be blown away. You'd be absolutely blown. I'm just having a drink. On.
Like when we saw that, and I remember one of us sent it in our group chat, and we were like, who is she talking about, and where can we find him?
You've seen this? We were like, what? Right, we're on it.
Like,
right.
Thank you so much.
And you know what, Emma was right on it, because right after I sent the Twitter, and then I'm atting the person that you're talking about, like telling you to mind your mother, you know what business. I just keep this a family show.
This is my daughter.
Oh my God.
Hello.
She's seen for this.
Again, I got scared because I thought someone is coming from behind me.
This is my youngest daughter. So I have 4 children. She's my youngest. Her name's Braieoux.
Nice to meet you.
Y'all are stunningly beautiful. You got some model blood.
You both are. You all are.
You got some good DNA going on there.
I have actually, that's something else I forgot to tell you. I do have 4 children. So I have 3 sons, and Braieoux is my last daughter. I had 3 sons to my first. Jehovah's Witness partner or husband, you could say. Gosh, that sounds bad. Okay, so then I left the religion, and a couple of years later met her father, and so she's the product of that relationship.
Can I just say as well, you don't look old enough to have children that age.
No, not at all. Y'all looks like sisters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's giving me chocolate. My eldest son is actually 29.
What?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah. So 29, and then I have, is he 29 this next birthday? 29 this next birthday, and then I have Brandon, who's 26, So Bo Daniel is my eldest. 28, 29.
No way.
Brandon is 26, and then Bailey, is he 24, Billy? I don't know, I think he's 24.
Wow.
And then
So you
Billy,
don't have
No way.
babies.
she's 14,
No way.
going on 15, so
You need to tell us your secret sometime.
Yeah, I
Yes,
know, right?
please.
you know what? I was actually Jehovah's Witness and I never drank or smoked. I was really I didn't party. And I think actually Molly, my father, as much as I don't really like him, he was Hungarian, so I think I picked up the European skin. So that's a good thing, right? Something positive from that. But yeah, a lot of sunscreen, exfoliate, water.
Yes.
And I'll give all those tips later, but on another time. What you're asking me? Oh yes, what was I? That fish Dory in Finding Nemo?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Relate to this. That's my gosh, it's like my second name. So you too, Chessa. Oh my god. Okay, so something that happens with. Well, I don't know. It definitely happens with me. So keep me on track, Spencer, because
No, you're fine. I was asking if you would have done anything differently, or is there anything you wish the Royal Commission would have done differently?
Okay. So yeah, going back to my rant on Twitter, and that long thread that everybody's seen. Okay, it's maybe. Oh gosh, it's a bit of a long story. Can I maybe start from the beginning?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. So, as you all know, I did the criminal trials. I did the 3 criminal trials. Took approximately around about 6 years from the point that I started that to the point that I finished that. So when I first started, and please don't be alarmed about this because generally it shouldn't take that long. It's just that my case was really difficult because of the elders and their behaviour and the changes in legal representation with the DPP. Anyway, that's all going to be in the book. I started writing a book, and you can all read the book when I finish it. And it's got a lot more detail in it than what I'm telling you today. And there is a lot more detail. But so we're at round about, say, 2013, 20 something. I've already started studying university. I finished the criminal trials. I've got my 4 children. I'm starting to get my life on track. So I started studying at university. I started studying psychology. I did really well. I got invited into the International Honor Student Society, top 6%. I was acing it. I met a university professor, Dr. Mark David Chong, and he said to me, Shelly, you should be studying law. I was like, thanks very much, I'm not that smart. I kind of ignored him a couple of times. Anyway, the third time I decided to give, what he was saying a go. So I didn't want to, one thing I don't want to do is live with regrets. So I decided to try law for at least 6 months. So I moved into the law cohort at university, and I loved it. Oh my goodness, this was my language. I loved it so much more than psychology. It was where I wanted to be, and I got accepted into that easy as. So as I started studying law, that was 2012, 2013, 2014, I got such high grades that I got accepted into the honour students stream of law at James Cook University in Townsville. And so as part of that, what an honours thesis is that you have to, instead of doing more subjects, they have this honours stream where you can write an honours thesis. An honours thesis is basically a big assignment up to 20,000 words. Mine should have been 10,000. It went to 20,000. But anyway, what it is that you find new ways of arguing criminal law, or not criminal, any law. It can be any law. So you just have to find new ways of arguing it, looking at it from a different perspective. So while those criminal laws have always been there, you just have to look at it from a different perspective. It has to be a new way of arguing it. Anyway, I decided to write my honours thesis on the Royal Commission. I thought, you know what, this is child sexual abuse. I so want to do this. This is going to be great. So I started drafting my honours thesis. Oh, actually, prior to that, I spoke to one of my friends that I knew who was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and she said to me, Shelly, and I didn't actually hang around them. She was only a new connection. So I actually cut all ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witnesses away. I didn't want to know any of them because of how harmful they were to me. So she said to me, Shelly, are you going to give evidence at the Royal Commission? I said to her, well, I've already done that in criminal court. I've got my life on track here. You know, I had a lot. One thing I will say, and I'm not sure that each of you can relate to this, but in my life, there has been the abuse occurred back here, but the snowball effects, it's like an avalanche, and the snowball effects just keep going and going and going. I might look okay, but I've had lots and lots and lots of other ongoing effects. It's of the abuse. It's like whack-a-mole. As soon as I deal with one issue, there's another issue and another issue and another issue. And I'm always seeming to just be in panic mode dealing with these continual issues. So anyway, I'm not sure if you can agree with that, or if you can relate to it, or if it's just me, but I think you might relate to it. But anyway, I said to my friend, you know what, I don't have the capacity to deal with this. I've got plenty of other stuff going on with university. I was working for myself, supporting my children, because Billy's father would not support my children. So financially, that's an issue. So I was working to support me and my children. I was studying full-time at university. I had health issues, kid issues, you know, lots of issues going on. And I said, sorry, can't do that. I've got to look after myself. And the issues were that bad at the time, those snowball effects, that I sought the assistance of the psychologist at university to help me get through university. So I had been seeing this guy, and his name's Keith Rowden, great guy. Anyway, he was really good to speak with and give me strategies on how to get through university while managing all the other issues. Anyway, the Royal Commission advertisements kept coming up over and over. And I don't know if most victims out there have a conscience, and you know what I'm talking about when I say this. So I said to myself, well, gosh, no, I can't deal with that. I've got plenty on my plate. I'm not dealing with it. Do you have a story to tell? It just kept coming up, radio, here, there, everywhere. And if the universe was ever telling me that I needed to contact the Royal Commission, they were saying it right now. So I'm like, oh, okay, fine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to quickly ring them. And I'm going to say, you know what? This is what happened to me. And, you know, and I was very familiar with the Royal Commission. I was very familiar with their terms of reference in religious institutions. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? I don't think I fit in. That were my first sentences. I don't think I fit within your terms of reference. But here's my story. Do you want to hear it? And they said, yeah, sure. I told them my story very briefly. Boom, 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 boom. That's it. From that, the Royal Commission contacted me back. They said to me, hey, we would like you to come and talk to a commissioner. So I never, ever applied to do a private session as quoted in the Royal Commission books. I didn't apply for it. They asked me. So they said to me, would you be prepared to travel to Brisbane? Because I lived in Townsville at the time. Would you be prepared to travel to Brisbane and, you know, share your story with the commissioners? We would like you to do that. We'll pay for your flight. That's what they did. They paid for my flight. So I said, sure. Okay, fine. I'll come help. So they flew me down on the 20th of February, 2014. They flew me down, and I spoke with a commissioner and another male, younger male, in a room just by yourself. Yes, very, very, very similar to the Jehovah's Witnesses, elders, process, which is traumatic enough, so you could imagine how I'm flipping out about it. And they started by saying things that they were recording the session. It was totally confidential. And these are the screenshots. So I will get into why I shared the screenshots later, but the screenshots that I shared in my Twitter feed they said a few things. And so those screenshots that I've provided in my Twitter feed are the exact words that were said in my private session. So I shared.
I can
yeah.
a few of them on the screen here.
Okay, so I shared two types of information with the Royal Commission. I had the first one, which was in 2014, which was my private session, and then I shared later on. They asked me to give public evidence, so that was the second form of information. So let's get back to the private session, as I want to clear up a lot of issues that are going around in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community and a lot of the attacks that I've been receiving from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as regards to the private sessions. So the first one said, what did it say again, Spencer? Can you put that back up?
Sorry, I'm trying to.
Right.
I felt like Willy Wonka by here, just pulling levers and stuff. Hang on one second. Here we go. Is it this one?
Yeah.
Here?
So they say they're very important. They are very important not only because we are interested in your particular story, your experiences, but also that we can gather an understanding of what happened in a number of institutions, including a number of religious organizations, and the Jehovah's Witnesses are a part of that. Okay. So do you have the next one?
They're not in a real order, so I'm gonna flash.
Yeah, this one. Okay, so on the side of the actual screenshot, you can see 10, 11, 12. So this is the second one. And I've deleted. Now, I want everybody to know that I absolutely, I love the Royal Commission, and I love the work that they've done. I love the commissioners themselves. I have great respect for the commissioners. And what I'm speaking about right now are the government processes about protecting victims' rights of consent. And I'm talking about those people behind the scenes and the government who have set up these processes to protect these stories. So before I go on anymore, the private sessions of the Royal Commission in Australia, they allowed a lot of people from various institutions, not just religious, Boy Scouts, all of these other institutions, to come and ask to have a private session with a commissioner. They recorded their stories by microphone, and they also then do a transcript. And this is the transcript of that story. So there were 8,000 victims like you, Chessa, that you've and like you, Spencer, that haven't spoken about this for like 20, 30 years. What did you say, Chessa? How many years does it take somebody to come forward?
Usually, statistically, it takes someone until about the age of 55, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this information,
Or today, because I'm 39 years old.
Yeah.
So it takes.
Spencer, I just want to say I applaud you for that. It must have taken all the guts and courage and all those motherfuckers who try to discredit any of you and any other one of you out there using your mental health issues, using your past as an abuse survivor against you.
Yeah.
They can get
Heard it
fucked.
from Molly.
Thanks,
All right, Shelly.
Thank you. So we're doing this private session. So that second one that you put up, that screenshot, and this is what. So basically, one of the biggest issues is this is a negative effect of the Royal Commission. So the commissioner says, so we're interested in that the sessions are being recorded, hence this little microphone that is flashing on the table, flashing at you. The reason for that is we want to look at the particular institution or a particular set of circumstances. We can come back and have a look at that record, have a look for that record. But this is clear. The conversation is totally what? Confidential.
Confidential, that's what it say.
We would only use part of that in a way that could identify if We seek your explicit consent at the appropriate time. Okay, these are the clear words. Now, I don't have to, nobody else can share my private session because a lot of people were attacking me in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community about the fact that I forgot whether or not I gave consent or whether or not I lied and said that I gave consent or didn't give consent, sorry, because what has happened is the Royal Commission has published, so basically, private session, where am I? Private session here, public evidence here in 2015. 2014, 20th of February 2014, Royal Commission, what is it, July 27th, 2015. My private session has been published without my consent. This is the issue. I'm not talking about my public evidence. I'm talking about this document that has explicit details and more details in there that I did not want to share in the 2015 evidence. It should have been protected. It's actually protected by legislation. I have been fighting this since early 2019, and I will get to that, how I started to do that. But my story has been published. My private session has been published under the name Martyr. It's been relabeled and it has been put into a narrative called Martyr. I did not give consent for it to be published. So all those ex-Jehovah's Witness activists out there, I did not give consent. In this session, it said, we will seek your explicit consent at the appropriate time. That means not now in the royal, in the private session. It means at a point in the future. Would you all agree? It means at the appropriate time. It's not right now. Unfortunately, what the Royal Commission has done is they have published in their publications that consent was obtained during the session. And it's not true. It's not true in my case. So I wonder, out of the 4,000 private sessions that have been converted into narratives, how many of those actually where the consent allegedly was obtained in exactly the same way? How many? To me, I mean, when I found out that it was actually the Royal Commission that published my private session in this Martyr document, my God, what an ultimate betrayal of trust for me. It is ultimate betrayal of trust. It's worse than my parents. It is worse than my mother. It's worse than my sisters. It's worse than the religion. It's worse than anything I have ever experienced in my entire life. Their trust betrayal is the worst. So keep going. We'll keep going about the transcript, and we'll talk about a little bit about what they said they would share and what they said they would not. We're looking at the next one.
Can I just add in, Shelly? Can I just add in that you said that it's not the case 29 PDF that's published? Can I just say, like, it's not that, just so that
very, very clear, and I think I confused a lot of people. That's why I wanted to come on and talk about it. So the private session is a document called Martyr, M-A-R-T-A. So if you see a story somewhere published as Martyr, I have not given consent for that to be published, and I will talk about more of it later on, but
and it's separate to what we put on here today.
You've got case study 29, the live hearings, my statement under BCG. That is what I said I would share. I did say, yes, you can share that. I've agreed to share that. That's not what I'm talking about. The blue book in the findings and the reports, that is what I said I would share, because I actually fixed up the statement, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll tell you about that. But let's go back to the transcript and see what else they said they would and would not do. So compare this with what their publications, the Royal Commission publications, say. So does anyone want to read it? Chessa, do you want to read it?
Sure. Am I reading this one that's in front of me right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner blank. What we are doing, however, is we are turning some of the stories that we have heard into stories that we can tell to the public, but not in a way that identifies the individual or the actual institution that is the location or the perpetrators. We are asking people whether they have any problems with their story being converted into a totally non-identified story.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So there are 4 things in this. There are 4 different issues. Number 1, they're not going to identify the individual. They're not going to identify the actual institution. They're not going to identify the location or the perpetrator. Okay, so if anybody can find Marta's story anywhere online, have a look at it. If you have a look at the Marta story, it is substantially similar to my public session because it's been taken from my private session. If you have a look at it, you will see that the Jehovah's Witnesses institution has been identified. You will see that it was my father, a ministerial servant, that has been identified. You will see that it's been identified as being occurring in Queensland. And so your 4 things here that they said that they would not identify, they've identified.
That is so wrong.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This is the cruncher.
Do you want me to read this one too?
Yeah, go.
All right, Commissioner, but that will only happen with a few stories. You can say no to that.
Okay, so do you know how many stories were private sessions were conducted by the Royal Commission? 8,000 in Australia, 8,000. Do you know how many they converted into narratives? It says a few.
How many?
Nearly 4,000. Half of that.
Wow.
So this is part of the issue, why I've come on today, because I'm pretty sure that's the last one. So at the end of the that private session, the commissioner asked me, this is when the recording was turned off, and he said to me, Shelly, would you be prepared to give public evidence? And I said to him, well, I'm concerned, because I'm doing a law degree. I've really struggled to get it done. I want to protect my right to practice law. And personally, for me to practice law, I don't want explicit details out there. I don't want the explicit details of my rapes and assaults out there. I don't want it. Attempted rapes, rather. I don't want it out there. I want to be able to feel confident enough psychologically to stand in court and act as a prosecutor or a DPP prosecutor to protect and fight for victims. If you publish my story, this is me psychologically speaking, you publish my information without me agreeing to that and explicit details of my sexual assaults, and everybody else in the courtroom, the defense lawyers, know about that, I feel like I'm standing there naked. I can't psychologically cope with that. I don't want to be in the public eye, and I don't want to then advocate for other victims because you've raped me and assaulted me all over again, because I said no. I said no to it. Okay, so one of the other things is I didn't know that this was going to happen at that point in time. When I went to give my private session, I said, yes, I'd be happy to be contacted. I did not give my explicit consent to share my story or to convert it into a narrative. I assumed that they were going to contact me at the appropriate time for my explicit consent. Now, studying law, we learn about what explicit consent is. So if any of you want to ever share your medical records with somebody else, do you have to sign a form for that? If you go from one doctor to another?
Oh, absolutely. It's called HIPAA here in America. You can't. You have to give consent. You can't just
say,
obtain
hey, I'm Shelly. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Although the HIPAA law is a very new law because of people being sued for those reasons, giving out details. Now that law exists, where physicians are held to a standard, I'm just saying medically, to not release personal information. Now, you can't just call doctor's office and say, hey, can I get Shelly's XYZ? No, it just absolutely couldn't happen here without consequences.
Yeah, and it's
Go ahead, Shelly.
It's even more strict in Europe with the GDPR. So much so that I could actually, like, if we had a Facebook conversation or a text message exchanges over the phone, whatever, I could not even quote your message legally without your
well,
consent.
that's freaking awesome, Molly, because that's
Like,
another
if you send me a message and then I come on live, I can say, yeah, I spoke to Shelly about the ARC. And that's all I could say. I could not quote you verbatim. Like, I could not say, Shelly said the ARC did this and this and this. I could not say it legally. I could go to jail for a year for that.
Okay. What about UK, Emma? What's it like in the UK? What do you do over there? Do you have
I'm not really sure, like, because a lot of stuff that I publish, I just put like copyright criticism and, you know, so I kind of like back myself up that way. So I've never been in the situation where
if you're sharing like your medical records? Have you ever been from one doctor to another?
I've never really looked into that. I've never had a reason to. The only
That'll be interesting to find out after the show.
What about Chessa? What about you? In your what state are you in?
I'm currently in Kentucky, but I've lived a lot of places in the United States.
Sorry?
I'm currently living in Kentucky, but I've lived in several different states. So,
and do they do that? Like, if you're wanting to share explicit details, so say you want to, share anything about you publicly. Sometimes even privacy rules, even with like phone companies, you have to share. You have to sign certain things. So, do you know what I'm talking about with that? Like,
absolutely, yeah. Well, the issue is everything is so archaic, and we move at such a slow rate with implementing policies to protect people's personal identification, protect their safety. Everybody always talks about a reward in this. What is in this for you? And this is not a winning situation. This is not where you win anything. There's no prize. There's no Willy Wonka ticket. Like, this is not an ideal situation for any of us, right? So when the most important thing in this is consent, like you said, and there are not enough privacy legislations implemented for people who are coming forward about things that could endanger their lives, their careers, their families, everything.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
We're talking about the legality of things, but can I also talk about people's morality? Just because you have the right, or you think you have the right to do something, don't mean you should do it.
Well, and
just because you can't do something doesn't mean that you should.
In this country, I mean, it's awful. And sorry, just one more thing.
You're good.
With Epstein and Weinstein and all these cases that we're seeing, we're uncovering very large, organized sex trafficking trade issues right now. Okay, never really been addressed. Been around since the Romans and the Greeks. Like, sex trafficking has been a form of international trade since humans began documenting history, literally. Like, Sumerians, sex trafficking. You've never known humanity without knowing that there was some form of sexual commerce happening. For the first time in human history, we're able to collectively get together cerebrally as a unit and understand that these things are happening. The problem is our legislation is so slow. Yeah. And they are not interested in implementing better policy, because if they do, they're going to show that the entire time that legislation is being passed in any country on this earth, we have been disregarding completely people who have been abused in such a way. B, that multiple organizations of religion, governments, and other cells of humanity have been forcibly abusing people this way and have put in policies to protect them and their organizations instead of protect victims. So as we begin to collectively discuss this as a society and have some sort of narrative, we need to do it responsibly. We need to understand that we need to change. You need to change, and you need to change now, because otherwise nothing's going to get done.
And we need to stand up more. Sorry, Chessa. Like, I've been saying, like, 2020 is the year where we need to fucking fight back, let's say.
Yeah.
We need to protest against this shit. We need to say this is not fucking right. We need to stand up against this shit. And I think 2020, even though it's been a majorly, like, messed up year, to me it feels like a year where people are starting to fight back. And we need to continue that momentum and keep it
Yes.
going. That
I
we're
get
not taking this.
responsibly.
We're not taking it for Black Lives Matter. We're not taking it for child sex abuse. We're not taking it for paedophiles. We need to
Right.
keep this momentum going where we are not taking this.
Well,
anymore.
where the silence are able to speak, and the silence are given a voice. And with social media and the platforms across the internet, across all jurisdictions, we now can join together and we can make a bigger voice. And, that's what my purpose is.
And even in our existing community, if I can just keep it all the way real, since Shelly, you brought it up.
I know.
Since you brought it up, even in our ex-Jehovah's Witness community, how dare some of us need to be ashamed for trolling a sex abuse victim. I don't care what you think you right about. You couldn't possibly be right against another sex abuse victim. You need to back off. You need to find something else to do. If you think that on one hand that you can bring awareness, but then step on the person that you're trying to bring awareness to, can somebody tell me how does that work? Oh, I'm helping Shelly. I want to help her bring awareness, but also, Shelly, be quiet and shut up and don't talk about your story. What is that?
Yeah, exactly. I find that really ironically hypocritical of a lot of people who use case study 29, and I've said this online, is that they use it like their own personal limits when they use it. They capitalize on it. They have talking points about it. But then when they feel like it, rather than speak up at all, I'm attacked. Because I don't have the right to say anything. Hey, so you shut the F up. Because you know what? We're going to take this 29. We're going to put it on our webpage. We're going to make all this money from it. We're going to capitalize on it. But you know what? We believe you for case study 29. But when it comes to you saying that you did not give consent for your private session to be published, well, we don't believe you. We're going to attack you and destroy your credibility. We're going to say to you, Shelly, have you got mental issues? Maybe you should go seek some mental help. Do you know what? For those activists that have attacked me in that manner, you know what? That is very, very similar to the Watchtower's policy. You need to all check yourselves of whether or not you're still being indoctrinated and saying whether we're mentally diseased, because that's how you're acting. You need to get rid of the chains of indoctrination.
Oh, Emma, I think I put you on. Wait a minute. Wait.
Also,
Wait. I think Emma going next. I'm sorry, Emma. I thought I heard.
That's what
I'm
I was
muting you. Sorry.
That's what I was saying to you, Shelly, the other day. Like, people that use your story to gain clicks. Oh my God, it's just like clout. We call it clout chasing activism, and it's so fucking wrong. Because at the end of the day, to use your story, 1 minute go, yes, we agree, and then the next minute say like, I just don't get it. Like, we are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are cast out, shunned. We need to fucking support child sex abuse victims. We need to support domestic violence victims. We need to support every victim, not re-victimize victims and not use them as clout
and exploit them.
That's what it is. It's exploitation. And for the person online who said that Shelly's her story is exhausting, you can also hit mute on Twitter, so you don't ever have to see her.
Said that. Fuck you.
Yeah.
That's one thing I want to make sure I make really clear. You know, when I'm speaking online and I'm talking on Twitter and I'm going off about things, I'm not talking to the activists, and I'm not looking for clicks. I'm not looking for the popularity contest. You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for the people who are like me. And I'm telling you, all of you victims out there, all you people who've been subject to sexual abuse and not being believed, you're the person I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for you. And you, and this is what has happened, Spencer, Molly, Chessa, you've heard me. You've believed it. And those people who are real about protecting victims and understanding the morality about consent and not consent, and understand that child sexual abuse is wrong, those people are drawn to us, and they're the people I want to speak to, because I got a way bigger plan than just this. So I'll talk about
that's actually a question I wanted to ask you whenever you get a chance to get there. But you had something very interesting to say about the redress scheme to us that people may not know. Is that where you're going? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you exactly how I got to give evidence, because there's a lot of stories
okay.
there, people claiming that they wrote the terms of reference, people claiming they were behind the Royal Commission. Let me be really clear. The people who wrote the terms of reference are the government people. And the people who were in the round table, if your name is not specifically mentioned, I think the terms of reference were written in 2013. If your name is not specifically mentioned as being shown, and if you are not put up there by the government, by Justice McClellan, I attended a human rights oration day. I saw Sherry D'Souza and Sasha D'Souza there in Sydney earlier at end of last year, I think it was, or early this year. No, I can't remember. Might have been last year. Justice McClellan was there, and he talked about the Royal Commission, and I had an opportunity to speak with him. But do you know who he had up there as being the forefront of making the Royal Commission, being behind it? Do you know who he had? It wasn't anyone from the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, I may tell you that. He had Chrissy Foster up there. If you don't know who she is, you need to all Google her, because she's the person who advocated for a inquiry into religious institutions' responses to sexual abuse. It wasn't any ex-Jehovah's Witness. It wasn't them at all. We were like a tiny little drop. It was the people in the Catholic institution. Chrissy Foster, she's my hero. She lost her daughters, one of her daughters' lives because of abuse. She advocated long before Jehovah's Witnesses even came onto the scene of the child sexual abuse. So those people are the ones that are responsible. Okay, so I did my private session, 20th of February 2014. Remember that. I go on about my merry way, think that's it, done my job. I said that they could contact me if they wanted to contact me about the private session, turning it into a narrative. I also said they could contact me to give public evidence, because he said it would not damage my legal, right to practice law. So that's what I said. Come 2015, I can't remember the exact date, and I'm trying to get those records right now, but the Royal Commission contacted me again by phone, and they said to me, hey, Shelly, you mentioned that you would be willing to give public evidence. Would you give public evidence? And I said, from that point in 2014 to 2015, I separated from my ex-partner, Billy's father, and my gosh, it was a lot of domestic violence, and we were concerned for our lives, me and my children, because of him. He did a lot of things like preparing a grave for me. My daughter was too scared to attend school. It just kept going on. So just as much as things were bad back then, they got worse.
I'm sorry to hear that, Shelly.
That's okay. It'll all be in my book. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, you read my book.
I'll be the first one in line.
Thank you. So because I had struggled physically from the effects of stress at that point in time, and as I mentioned earlier, that I was speaking to a psychologist at university, I trusted him, and he was helping me. And I said to him, look, I'm talking to a psychologist. I really need to talk to him before I do anything at all, because he was like my go-to person to help me get out of the situation I was in. So I said I needed to speak with him. I went to speak to my psychologist at university and said what the Royal Commission had asked me to do. And he said, no way, Shelly. No way. You can't do this. You've got too much of a load of stress on you already. I don't even know how you're coping as it is. You need to look after yourself. You need to look after your children. And you need to finish this degree so you can, be independent. And that was my plan, to be independent from the partner I was with. So, I went back home, and the Royal Commission contacted me again by phone, and they said to me, Shelly, so what have you decided? And I said, well, I went to see my psychologist. My psychologist said, no, not to do it. And I'm going to follow what my psychologist said, because I've got a lot on my plate and I'm barely functioning right now. I mean, I had to go to court for domestic violence protection orders against my ex-partner to protect me and my children. I had padlocked my front gate. I had a neighbour that was harassing me. You name it, it was happening. So I really, at that point in my life, my children and myself and my own safety was the highest priority, okay? But when I said that I couldn't do the public evidence, this little conscience that I have inside my head said to me, can't you find somebody else to do it this time? Like, I'm really tired of being that pinata for the Jehovah's Witnesses and for the community. You know, I'm tired of being attacked all the time because I was really attacked with the criminal trials, attacked by my family. Yeah, I just kind of had enough of being attacked. I'm tired of it. Can't you find somebody else to do this? Because it was extremely, extremely important to me that the two-witness rule and those issues were brought out. And guess what the Royal Commission said? They said to me, well, while we've got a lot of people that have got evidence, not evidence, while a lot of people have contacted us in relation to a lot of stories that have come in, they don't have enough evidence. They don't have enough physical evidence or, like documented evidence. And they said to me, and I'll be really clear with this, they said to me that unless I decided to give evidence at the Royal Commission, they would not be able to proceed with a case study on the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
That's a fact. So guess where that left me? That left me in a situation where I was having to choose between what was best for my family and what was best for the rest of the community. I felt responsible. I mean, and although I'm not being abused and I knew that I'm out of the abuse, sexual abuse, and the community, guess what? I felt responsible for all of those people in there that are still getting abused. And when I lived in North Queensland, there were at least 10 people that I knew, other children, young children, teenagers that were also sexually abused by other people in that area. 10. So it was kind of common knowledge within that congregation and around in that area. So I knew that if I didn't say anything, I should say something, right? I should do this. And so without hesitation, I said, fine, I'll do it. Because I had the criminal trials, I had the judicial notes, I had my letters that I wrote to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. I had a lot of information that was useful to the commission. So I said, okay, I'll give evidence then. So going into that, I was not at a really good place emotionally, psychologically. I was, well, you could say I was on the ground. I was splattered on the ground. I was barely keeping my head above water. I had my 4 children to look after because their father really, the 3 boys' biological father did not help me financially or look after them in any way, shape or form. My current daughter, she didn't want to go to school. I had a lot on my plate, and I was at breaking point before I even talked to the Royal Commission, let alone dealing with bringing up all this trauma in my life that I thought I'd packed away after the criminal trials. So I decided to give evidence. Now, when I went down, I was still studying at university. I think in around June, July, I was actually in Sydney with my son. My son decided to study law for a little bit, which is great. But anyway, he came to Sydney with me to the national competitions for law. So in the universities, you would have national competitions for law, and this time it was being held in Sydney at ALSA. It's called Australian Law Students Association. So I was down there in the I wasn't participating in the competitions, but I would assist in the competitions. So I'd get to see students argue in court and see who was good, who was not good, and I loved it. It was awesome. But when I was down there for that event, I attended the Royal Commission offices at Farrier Place in Sydney. I consulted with the staff of the Royal Commission to start drafting my statement for evidence for case study 29. Now, in doing that, they had taken all of my records, mostly from my private session, and they'd put it in a statement to assist me. Joanna Blair and Amanda Dench. I met with these women at the sessions. I was there by myself with my son. There was no other ex-Jehovah's Witness there. I know there are people that have claimed that they've assisted me to give evidence at the Royal Commission. Completely untrue and fabricated. They have never assisted me to give evidence. And let me be clear on what evidence is at the Royal Commission. So what will happen if you're asked, and if you want to use the terms of evidence at the Royal Commission, if somebody claims that they've given evidence at the Royal Commission, you ask them to see their subpoena. The Royal Commission gave me a subpoena, which meant it's a legal document that said that they wanted me to attend on a certain date at a certain time to give evidence and produce information about the sexual assaults of my sexual assaults. If other people have claimed that they've given evidence at the Royal Commission, ask them for this document, because there's a lot of false and fabricated claims circling in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, and they're not true. So I'm telling you right now, and if you ever want to see, actually, I will show at some point my subpoena from the Royal Commission. So you know I'm telling you the truth. Now, during these consultations at the Royal Commission in Sydney with Joanna Blair and Amanda Dench and the other people that were there, I can't remember the names, but Joanna Blair was one of the solicitors that was helping Angus Stewart with getting together the evidence. So to assist me, she gathered all of the evidence, information in my private session. She gathered some information from the criminal trials, and she put them all in this document. She gave me this document, and basically she wanted me to just check over and sign it. So that document there, when you go to case study 29 and you look at the exhibits and you download an exhibit called BCG's statement, that is the statement that I read out as public evidence. That's a statement that they're referring to in the Blue Book. That's a statement that I chose to put in there. Now, let me assure you, the information that's in that statement and the original statement that the Royal Commission gave me as to assist me, their first draft statement, are completely different. I expressed to both of the staff members, and the staff members when I was writing the draft statement, I do not want to share explicit details of my sexual assault. I want to practice as a lawyer. I'm studying law. I don't want to jeopardize that. I don't want explicit details of my sexual assault. While I want to help, I don't want to share everything. I mean, I've got to have some kind of, self-esteem. Please just let me have something for myself. I want to just keep some form of self-respect. Please. I was in criminal court for 6 years. I was cross-examined on these explicit details over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I've done that. And this is what I said to the staff members. I have already been in court. It has been proven that my father sexually assaulted me. I've been cross-examined. We've gone over these explicit details. I thought that the Royal Commission was about the responses of the religion, not about whether or not I've been abused. I've been abused. It's been proven in a court of law. Tell me, is this about the responses of child sexual abuse? Why do I have to go back through all of this extra trauma here? I don't want to do it. Like, I want to put in what I want to put in here. So I deleted all of these explicit details, and I said, I do not want them in this statement. I want to come from a position of power from this statement, and I want to share, and I want to be inspiring to other people. And in saying that, when I decided to give public evidence, I thought that I was going to give public evidence with my face, my name, Shelly Braieoux, now got Dean in front of it. I've been married since then. But that's what I was prepared to do. You know why I wanted to do that? I wanted to do that because I did not want my face blacked out, because I believe that that denotes shame. And it sets a very, very, very bad example to everybody else that I'm asking to come forward. I don't want other people to be ashamed of what's happened to them, because it's not our shame. It's the perpetrator's shame. It's their sin. It's their crime. It's not our fault. Put it back on them. And that was my message to other victims. That's what I wanted to share. So I think it was like the day before the Royal Commission, like we drafted the statement well and truly before I actually attended the Royal Commission. And it was finalised before that, and I'd signed it. So the statement that UC signed, I agreed to share that information. I did not agree to share my private session. And what else has happened? The Royal Commission has published, I mean, to explain all of this, you remember how I told you how distressed I was at the time of giving evidence at the Royal Commission? Well, the Royal Commission would send me tender bundles. I would get all this information, hundreds and hundreds of documents in a tender bundle. I just could not keep up with it. I was getting like 4 hours sleep a day to do what I was doing with university, and I was still studying. I didn't stop. I was still providing for my kids. I was still looking after my kids. I just didn't have the time or the headspace to go through hundreds of documents that they were sending me in a tender bundle. So I don't say that they didn't tell me that they weren't going to share these documents. I'm saying that I just didn't have the capacity, which they knew about from the beginning. And they knew that I didn't want to share explicit details. So what they did, the exhibit list on the Royal Commission website, on this exhibit list, they put up criminal court trial transcripts. They put up the explicit charge sheets of the exact offences of my sexual assault. So they're explicit details. They put them up and they published them. And this is something that I want to make sure that everybody knows, whenever you are sharing your story, please ask how this is going to be shared, why it's going to be shared. How do you protect your information? Are you going to be identified? Do you know what? The Royal Commission never told me, when I agreed to give evidence and when I was subpoenaed, that I would never, ever, ever be able to share my name in connection with BCG. They never told me they were going to take my documents, my handwritten letters, and publish them as exhibits. They never told me they were going to publish my criminal court trial transcripts. They never told me any of this. They never told me that they would take my private session and put it under Creative Commons license to revoke at some point in the future. So now this is 5 years later on. They published all of those details as exhibits, my handwritten letter. And then we have the attack of, I won't say the name, but another person in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community who wanted to write a book about me. It wasn't until 2017 did I realize that all these documents are up there. I'm going, oh my God, holy shit. Like, for God's sakes, they have got all this information, because this person said they wanted to download every document on the Royal Commission website, all of the exhibits, put them in a book, put his copyright sticker on a book, him make money from it. So when you have somebody's copyright sticker on a book, it means no one else can use that information. You know what? That's not his information. That's my information. Those letters are about me to the Royal Commission. Those letters between the elders of the congregations about me. My handwritten letter was to the Watchtower. You're not taking that and you're not owning it and you're not making money from it. Okay? So that's when I started fighting back in the community. And what this person did, unfortunately, I went into the community under my own name, Shelly Braieoux, and nobody knew that I was BCG, because a couple of days before the commission, maybe even on the day of the commission, they said that I had to use a pseudonym, BCG. Now, I did not choose to use a pseudonym. I did not want to use a pseudonym. I want to use my own name. They said that my sisters could be identified. And so I agreed, then fine, okay, whatever. I wasn't switched on enough at that point in time that my name on my statement is Shelly Braieoux. That is not the name I was born with. It was not the name I was given. It is no connection to my sisters' names. I don't look like my sisters. I look absolutely nothing like them. I have no connection with any of them in any name, married name or whatever. My name that you see now, Braieoux, was made up by my son. So when I split with my daughter's father, I had a choice. I could either go back to my married name, go back to my maiden name, which is my father's name, or I could, married name, stay in the current name of an abusive partner, or go back to, so hang on, my maiden name, didn't want to do that. Did not want to go back to my married name because I've divorced him. Did not want to go and stay in the same abusive name, last name that I was using of my abusive partner. I did not want to use that. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't belong anywhere. I started getting emotional. Don't cry much, but I was getting emotional. And my eldest son, Bo Daniel, said to me, "What's wrong, Mum?" And I said, well, I just don't belong anywhere. I had the change of name application. I'm trying to work out what name do I go to? I really don't belong anywhere. You belong with your kids. That's about it. Like, I'm an orphan. So he said to me, "Mum, yeah, you belong with us." He said, "How would you feel if I made a name up for you out of the initials of your children's given names?" That's where Braieoux comes from. It is the initials of my children's given names, the names that I chose to give them.
Wow.
So that's where Braieoux comes from. So if any of you have any issues with your last name being associated with
cool.
abuse, you can have the right to change your name. Change your life. And I don't want to be triggered by saying my maiden name ever again. I don't want to even, first name is not even my name, the name I was raised with. I can't even handle hearing the name. So I just changed it. So that's why I got Braieoux. And so when, after the Royal Commission, they gave a direction that I was not allowed to publish my name in connection with BCG, I fought it. I fought it straight away. I fought it, I think, about 2 or 3 times. I wrote to them and said, "I want to be able to speak. You've silenced me. You never told me I would not be able to talk about this. It's important to me that I advocate for victims. It's why I studied law. I want to be able, you've silenced me. Religion has silenced me for all this time. Now you're silencing me. I don't want to be silenced. I want to talk. I finally got my voice back. I want to talk about it. I want to advocate for victims." Eventually, I think it was in mid-2017, they decided to lift the pseudonym, and I published that letter. I put that on my Twitter feed. So if anyone wants to see the letter, I blacked out my previous names. But yes, the Royal Commission said that they would allow me to publish Shelly Braieoux in connection with BCG. So that's why I'm allowed to publish my name. But anyway, going back to the book that was somebody wanted to write about me. I did the right thing. I even had the moral code of the Jehovah's Witnesses still. I don't know if you all still have that or not. But, hey,
You mean go to the person?
I went to the person first.
Right.
I went to the person privately and I messaged him and I said, "Hey, I heard that you want to write a book about me." This is before he said he's going to download all the exhibits. And I said, "Hey, I could help you with this. I'm BCG, I could help you." And he said he just ignored that message and he kept squirting on public media. "I'm going to download all the exhibits and blah, blah." But he's ignored my message that I wrote like a long time ago. Pays to check your inbox, dudes. So anyway, I said to him online, under my own name, because I'm not embarrassed. I speak up for myself. I said to him, "Hey, don't you think you should be asking these 2 people for consent to write this book?" I mean, and this is something else I want to make really clear. I'm not against journalistic writing about abuse that's reported in the newspapers or Case Study 29. I have no problem. No problem. In fact, I want you to share Case Study 29. But what I do have an issue with is when somebody goes beyond journalistic writing. He is writing about the criminal court trial transcripts of my sexual assaults. He is writing his own opinion on what happened with my sexual assaults. He's writing his own opinion on what happened with the Royal Commission. He knows nothing. He knows nothing about the Royal Commission. Some bloke that can't even be man enough to say his own name on social media. I don't want a man who doesn't know me talking and rewriting my sexual assaults. No way are you putting your grubby fingers on my information. That's how I felt. So anyway, I'm being polite. I tried the other way. I tried privately, and then he's still going on about it. So I said to him, hey, you know, do you think that morality-wise, you know, you should maybe, you know, these two women have had their consent taken off them their entire life. Do you not think that you should, like, at least ask them for consent? This is no, guess I got one of them. I don't need the other one. Hey, it's a matter of public record. I can do what I want. They put it out there, I can use it. So you know what happened? I said to him, but you know, like even like the sacrifices, what about even out of respect for people? Like, shouldn't you just have some respect? I mean, these people, these women, I don't know if you know, but they gave up their lives to do this evidence. Shouldn't you have some respect for them? No, I can do what I want. So I said, you know what? You need to check your inbox, dude. When he checked his inbox, guess what he saw? Well, I said to him, I'm BCG and I do consider this your formal legal notice. I do not give you consent to write this book about me. I do not give you consent. And all this guy was concerned about was whether or not he could write about the documents and the other witnesses, and he could use all my documents, which is what, as I previously mentioned, these criminal court trial transcripts, I don't want them published, okay? Because the Royal Commission messed up here. I don't want them published. I want my own rights to choose what I want to share with the public for my career and to help other victims, because that's the bigger goal, right? I've been studying since 2011. I have had 4 hours sleep average every night. I have fought tooth and nail. I have given up so much time with my children and fun and happiness because I've been sitting there all night studying instead. So no, I'm not letting this guy take that off me. So what this guy did, unfortunately, he hopped on his social media page where he was promoting the book, and deceitfully, and I will say this because it was deceitful, he hopped on there and he said, hey, you know what, someone doesn't want me to write the book. He never mentioned it was BCG. He knew it was BCG, never mentioned it. And he got all those people that were following him with the book, and they thought it might have been a Jehovah's Witness person, that these people started attacking him. Oh, tell this person to get a life. Do this, you know, ignore this person. You know what? And so I private messaged many of these people, and I said, you know what, it is my life. It is not just one little portion of my life. It's been every single decade of my life. And this guy is wanting to publish in a book, and that's not fair. I have the right to choose what I want to share. So anyway, massive fight on social media, and I know there are so many extra witnesses just want it to be all calm. But we are in the midst of legal change. We are on new ground, and I'm so sorry that, you know, you guys think it's all infighting, but we're fighting for the bigger principle, and the bigger principle is protecting victims' rights to consent. So I then approached there's a couple of institutions like No More Lawyers. They're a legal institution that was set up for to help victims of the Royal Commission. And you know what happened? I approached them. So the Royal Commission has legislation that protects their witnesses from any effects of giving evidence. I approached the Royal Commission. I approached No More Lawyers. No help. No help from No More Lawyers. My barrister was overseas, so I approached their firm. There was a barrister there, and I really can't remember his name to say thank you, but I'm so grateful for his help. He said to me, approach the Royal Commission, Shelley, and ask them to remove those documents and put a direction not to publish those documents. And to the Royal Commission's credit, Justice McClellan issued a direction not to publish, and he removed those documents from the Royal Commission exhibit list. But what had happened was everybody had already downloaded them beforehand. Now, fast forward, I've seen these specific documents being published online on ex-Jehovah's Witness sites. These bundle of documents that are under a direction not to publish. So let's get to fast forward now. So now I've done my evidence, everything like that. One other thing that I would say is that the reason why I've decided to come out publicly about what really happened with the Royal Commission is not to bag them out. It's to raise a bigger issue about what's happening in society against victims of abuse. So if you all go report, my plan is for you to report and take back your power, go get law degrees, go get social, be a social worker, be a psychologist and help victims of abuse and get their voice back. That's my plan for you guys. That's what I want to empower you to do. But if you do this, you may very well end up in my situation. And my situation is that since I gave evidence at the Royal Commission, prior to giving evidence, I never had a problem getting jobs legally. I worked in a mid-tier law firm as a paralegal, just walked into it, didn't have to fight for it. I applied to be a judge's associate. I was one of the 2 finalists for a judge's associate position, which is a very sought after, high profile position. I never had any contacts in the legal industry. The girl that got that job, her father owned a law firm, one of the big law firms in that city. So that's why she got the job above me. But I just got mine just on me. And since that point in time, I've studied and I've done a hell of a lot more, acquired a lot more legal skills and a lot more employable. Do you know what happened after the Royal Commission? Because the Royal Commission asked me to give evidence in case study 29, and I did that. Case study 54 was connected with that. And then they asked me back again to give evidence in case study 57. So I helped them in 3, not 1, 3 case studies, 3 of them. So case study 57, I decided to give it under my own name, Shelly Braieoux. So if you Google it, you'll see my statement there. That session was about the nature, causes and impacts of abuse. I could not mention the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I alluded to them and how damaging it was to me. And it wasn't until that case study did I realize, oh my goodness, I thought I was over the abuse. I thought that because I left the religion, I thought that I was fine. I didn't think I was affected by it anymore. I've fronted my abuser. I've gone to court. I'm moving on. I'm not affected by this abuse anymore. I'm good. So when they asked me to give this evidence in case study 57, I thought I should start preparing for it early since I was short of time. I remember on the plane flight back to Townsville, I'm trying to draft it. You know what? I could not write 1 sentence without bawling, because I then realized at that point that the snowball effects that I'm talking about, they're the reason why I'm having them. It's because it's connected to the abuse, and that's how damaging it has been in my life. Anyway.
Shelly, I don't want you to, I just wanted to interject for just a second, rather. For our YouTube family, thank you for joining us. For our Facebook family, I think Facebook has a limitation of a 4-hour limitation of streaming. No, you're fine. So I don't want to cut you off on because I'm listening like this. Woo, So I want to say for the last 15, I just want to let you know that it's about 15 minutes before I cut you off. And then and I think Chessa wanted to say something really quickly. You can take us out, actually.
Okay, Shelly, did you want to finish up what you were saying?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, one of the issues of the Royal Commission is that I approached the Attorney General about publishing my private session. They know that I'm identified in it. They've written letters to these people that are publishing the martyr story on their website, and they're asking them to remove it, and they're not removing it. But what the bigger issue is in society is that after I gave evidence, I was discriminated against because I was a victim. I asked, law firms just to volunteer for them. And like a good Jehovah's Witness, I asked for feedback why I didn't get a volunteer position. And I was told by particular law firms verbally that they don't hire victims. They just don't hire them. So I was going to keep all of this quiet. I was going to keep everything quiet about what has happened really about the Royal Commission, but people have attacked my credibility online and through my employment as well. So I am now making this public because the bigger issue is that victims need to be respected, their consent needs to be respected, and if you are going to go study, society needs to change. They need to stop re-victimizing people. That's my message, and that's why I'm coming out with it. There are 6 months now between the redress scheme. So if those who don't know about the redress scheme, with the Australian Royal Commission, it's a compensation scheme. They've given the Jehovah's Witnesses another 6 more months. There's Jehovah's Witnesses and I think another 3 or 4 organisations that have not joined up. So what I'm asking everybody to do from now into the next point in 6 months is to make it public. If you have been an abuse survivor without identifying yourself at all, I want you and everybody else internationally to start gathering the victims in each state. I've got another whole episode on this. My husband and I, Kevin Dean, we are starting a YouTube channel and a website, and we will be talking about what you can do. But what I'm asking everybody to do is to keep child sexual abuse in the media. If you don't keep it in the media in the forefront, it will be forgotten. We have the platform. I wrote a submission to the government in, it was case submission 24 to the National Redress Scheme, and they published parts of my submission in their report. They published 3 things. So as much as people can write letters, unless you're published in a report as actually having something good to say or something of value legally, you really haven't made a difference. So when you are writing stuff, you've got to make sure that it is on point legally. So 3 things. I asked for them to stop delaying. And that was referred to by the Clan Network, with the Clan Network on footnote 4, page 14. The second thing I asked for was revoking the charitable status. That was referred to in footnote 11, along with a whole group of other people. No ex-Jehovah's Witnesses wrote about that. It's just me, along with these other people. The third thing was, and up until I just had a look at it this morning, I asked the Royal Commission to provide a list, like while they provided a list of conforming institutions for sexual abuse, there was no corresponding list for those that were not joining the redress scheme. I asked the Joint Select Committee for the redress scheme to start naming and shaming these institutions, and that's on footnote 20, and they've done that. So that is, I've contributed, yay, finally. So the only way you can get this resolved is legally. You have to speak up. You have to write to the politicians. There was more that I was going to say about the public interest issue, but we don't have enough time. So
we are running out of time. But you know what, Shelly? We're going to have to have you back if you want to come back.
Because I took too much.
Yes. No, you don't.
No, we have. Well, Emma does our scheduling, right? We have a part 2. Well, this is part 1 and 2. Okay. So that may be part 3, the Watchtower Victims Memorial Day, where we are going to have a visual for shunning.
Yeah.
And that sort of things. And we can give you a spot there to be able to. But I wanted to say really quickly, while you're on the redress screen, you mentioned something very interesting to us before we came on that some people may not know. And let me know if I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah.
That it's not retroactive.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So one of the key things from the Royal Commission is they can make recommendations to the government. The government has to enact them. So it's up to the government of the day, who's ever in power, to choose to accept them. So one of the recommendations were from the Royal Commission was to enact a criminal institutional offence. So you could charge the companies and the institution for not reporting child sexual abuse. One of the issues of that is, and me and another couple of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, people I trusted, and it was Irene Shea who did this with me. So thank you, Irene, who did So that's the person who helped me with this. Now, her and I got my honours thesis. I wrote my honours thesis with a view, because I knew that the recommendations of the Royal Commission, if they made the recommendations to institute a criminal offence for institutions, it would only, and I did a lot of research, I talked to a lot of politicians and senators and political meetings to find this out, it would only take place if that legislation, so say they instituted the December 20 of 2020, December 20, that legislation would only act from that point forwards. It would not act backwards. That means all the victims that have been abused in the institutions would get no justice. And that's why I wrote my honours thesis. So I was trying to find legal ways to hold the institution accountable. And I particularly focused on criminal, because what happens is the governments, you make a complaint to police, but the government steps in and they take over and they use their money. And so then the Watchtower is fighting them with their money. And then, you know what, it's a loggerheads. And this is what you're seeing now with the redress scheme. This is part of my strategy, and I want to share more of it with everyone. But the key point is, we have in Australia criminal legislation that I argued in my honours thesis that we could use right now. In each state, we could use this, and our laws come from the UK. I was talking to Emma about that. It's quite probable that these laws, criminal laws, exist everywhere around the world. And so that's part of my honours thesis, and the girls will probably provide a link for you if you want to read it.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about that.
Most definitely. And so I'd just like to say, before we close out, I think we got about 10 minutes left before Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg gonna cut us off, y'all. To say, Shelly, thank you so much for coming here with all the information, all the advice. And I don't know, I know you say we talked about religion, but you kind of gave me a little preacher vibe, because you're definitely a motivator.
Oh, I love it.
Definitely a motivator.
I want to inspire. That's part of it. You know, you're all strong women. You know, if I can do a law degree, you all can do a law degree. I'm telling you right now, you have the resilience, you have the intelligence, you can do anything you want. Do not think that you are not educated. I did year 10. I was only a year 10 graduate. That's it. The rest of it is from what I've learned. And if I can do it, you can do it. And if you've been to these meetings, you know how to take notes, and you can definitely study.
So I just wanted to talk about your... Oh, go ahead, Emma.
I'm so glad, Shelley, that you've come so far, despite all the obstacles that have been thrown in your way. You've literally just batted them and just carried on. You are a fucking warrior.
Well, I can tell you one thing right now. After this year, it's been this last year since the Royal Commission has been particularly difficult. I just want to say thank you to my husband, and that is Kevin Dean, and he was an ex-elder, and he's picked me up and he's helped me through this, and proposed to me and we got married. So there you go.
Wow. Congratulations.
So I just wanted to give a final word from the glass table, because I don't want us to get cut off before we say this. I think Chessa's going to take us out, but Emma, you said something as a last point.
I just wanted to say, like we touched on earlier, infighting. Now, people talk about infighting where it's like, no, if you're going to behave badly, you will get called out. It's not infighting. Just because we're an ex-Jehovah's Witness community, it doesn't mean if you get called out for your bad behavior, it's infighting. We are fighting bad behavior. And that's what I just wanted to say. And the other thing is, support victims. Do not re-victimize victims. They've already been through so much shit to start with. Do not re-victimize them.
And I just want to say something before Chessa closes us out, that, you know, a lot of people, we had this in our toxic episode, if you guys missed it. And calling out toxicity does not mean that you're toxic. The environment that Shelly described today is a very toxic environment. If you are a child sex abuse, a CSA activist, be that. That means you're a CSS activist for Jehovah's Witnesses, for Catholics, for whomever.
Yeah.
And it's not about our goal. Yes, the Watchtower needs reform. Yes, some of us want the watchtower to come down. All of us want us to watchtower to come down, but we're not Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. I think, Emma, you mentioned that on our Toxic show, where as Jehovah's Witnesses, we're used to being silent and not calling out bad behavior.
We're also accountable for our own behavior, and lots of people in the community need to learn that.
All right, Chessa, so what's the last word for the day?
Oh gosh.
We got about 7 minutes.
Obviously, we all have a lot more that we could say on this subject, and I really hope to have you back, Shelly. I'm going to be able to do less videos in the next little bit. I've already talked to the girls about it, so I definitely need Shelly, you to come on. Other people who feel the same way Shelly does, that recognize that there's a need to implement different changes to the way we're doing things to respect human rights, you know. And I think, you know, whenever you think a survivor is being disingenuous when they tell you that they don't want you to share their information, you have to recognize, like you said, Shelly, we've been giving our dignity away for other people's comfort our entire lives. We've had our dignity and our consent taken advantage of. So if you think that wouldn't be a point of concern for us, or that we would be educated in the different ways that can happen, and where changes need to be made, then you need to educate yourself. And I would say, you know, we need more activists. We need more support. One of the reasons that I'm taking a break is because we need more funding. And so I've been in discussions with like the American Cancer Society and different organizations. I'm getting more back into international business, which I used to do for a number of years. And, you know, I started working at the age of 9. So I know that sounds crazy, but like I have a very long experience in international business. And like Shelly said, you know, all of us doubt ourselves because we feel like we haven't done anything significant enough, when the very survival and intelligence of your being could be the force that changes the world. And we need more people to be able to have a palatable narrative about this. And anybody who wants to be involved in child sexual abuse advocacy, fighting clergy penitential privilege, which is the privilege that gives people the right to silence other people, abolishing the statute of limitations so that people can come forward about their sexual abuse. And it doesn't have to be within a 3-year timeline sometimes. After someone turns the age of 18, that gives someone no time to establish themselves, to be in a safe place where they can come out, okay? We have antique legislation that needs to go, and that includes in our culture. That includes in all of our cultures across communities. And we need to have more palatable narratives. We need to educate ourselves. Mandated reporting. If you are a child sexual advocacy survivor person, and someone comes forward to you and says that there's a child in current abuse, and you want to preach about 2-witness rule and Watchtower not coming forward, you could endanger a child if you don't follow things correctly. Mandated reporting is free in most states, okay? Just a few clicks, you go through, you know, reading a couple articles. It's not too hard. Anybody can do it. There's websites that you can go to that are like universities, but they're for free. And you can go and you can educate yourself. Will you get the certification at the end that says you did? No, but you'll have the knowledge to be able to be ethical. And if we call you out, or even if we call out a behavior and you feel like it's a personal affront, so do we. And it's really just about growth. It doesn't have to be about you or me. It's just about growing so that we can achieve something. And, you know, I'm really hoping in 2021 that we'll be able to get the courts back in order around the world and really finally address this in a way that's going to make a change.
All right.
And let's keep standing up. Because like I said earlier, like we're all standing up for our, this year seems a year where we're fucking standing up for our rights. Let's keep speaking out and keep fucking doing this.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we have this platform. It started off really small because some of us felt voiceless, you know, and some of us felt beaten down, not heard. So we just happen to be women. We do get some, you know, comments because it happened to be a lot of women on there. You know, I think the funniest one, the sea of estrogen. I think we got one time, and a bunch of other kind of stuff.
But
we've had male guests. I know. I think it's.
I love it when we have male guests, so it's not a problem. It's just, It's just how it happened.
It's just how it happened. It's
Listen,
just how it
this is
happened.
one of the most intelligent conversations I've heard on this subject from people who actually understand what's going on than I've heard on most channels. And that's not to knock other people doing advocacy or trying to get this stuff out there. It's just saying we need to mature. We need to do things better. And if someone doesn't want to give your consent for you to publish their material, take it off. Don't do it. Just don't
That's
do
flat
it.
out. That's it.
And, one other thing, if I can just really quickly say, if somebody has approached you, please, just you know what, just say sorry to them. Just go, hey, no problem, we'll just remove it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to attack them. Just, you know, we're all this is a new ground for everybody. We're just trying to be better than the Watchtower. So we're respecting people's rights in our. Once we've left, we should respect people's rights.
Especially
Respect is what it
victims.
comes down to.
Right.
Next time we'll look at the consent video.
Yes. We'll get to the consent video, but I did put it in the comments, you guys, so you guys can take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and sign off before Mark Zuckerberg does it for us. See you later.
Thank you so much, ladies. I love it.
Oh, Shelly, don't go anywhere. Don't click off too quick.
All right.